Hexi, welcome to Pure Value Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No.
This is great.
How are we doing? So it's been a long time coming. We talked about this for quite a bit, and have you coming, and I want to sort of give everybody a little bit introduction of you, and if you want to ask something, that'll be great. So you and I met, this is exactly 10 years ago, 10 plus years actually, when you were just attending USC at the time, and then we met through mutual friends, and time flies. Now we move on from our 20s to 30s, and been quite a journey. So, and also after the USC, you started your career as a software engineer in Amazon, AWS, Amazon Web Services, right? And that was a 5 years and a half, almost 6 year journey for you as well. The internship was 2017, right? You officially started 2018 to 2023. Then afterwards, Hexi founded his own company, actually numerous times, right? Across different vertical software spaces, right? So we want to talk about those things, but also, as always, on Pure Value Insights, we're touching all aspects of life, right? So we'll start with professional things, such as your software experiences. How do you, obviously the big topic lately, it's about, AI and all these type of things. And I'm super interested in also in the Amazon leadership principles, which we talk about numerous times privately, even I think in 2018 when we were a lot younger and immature back then, let's say. But those principles still resonate today. And then, and a lot of other things too, family values. We'll talk a little bit about hoops and how we bonded as friends. That 2018 Lakers season, we'll talk a lot about, playing sports together. That really built this bond, right? So all those things. And if you will, indulge us. Give us a little introduction for yourself, and then we can start it from there.
Sounds great. Thanks for the generous intro. So a little bit, if I were to wrap my life in 2 minutes, I would say I've always been a kind of a not so normal child. I've always been kind of like the thinking outside of the box kid that doesn't want to be the average person that comes to be. So at age of 14, I decided to go to the United States. When my mom asked me, do you want to go to the States? I realized the school ends at 2:00 in the afternoon versus back home in China, it ends at 10:00. So I was like, of course, I would love to. And then I came and I picked a name for myself, Hexi, because I was originally given the name Eric, which was like too generic. So I didn't want to be like everybody else. So I picked a name for myself that wasn't really chosen before and kind of started my journey here. Fast forward, I love building business. I have an intuition, and I also love problem solving. So that kind of brought me to a computer science degree and a software engineer background. Then subsequently, with software being very powerful, entrepreneurship journey after I left the big corporate. So.
Awesome. And then speaking of names, I want to add this part to the intro as well. Hexi is now the CEO of Bumblebee. And tell us about Bumblebee. Tell us about the name. Tell us about what you currently are doing. And then if there's anything you want to add there that's interesting. And you always had unique names and how you name your companies, your projects, things you do, right? So tell me about that.
Yeah, Bumblebee is a vertical AI software company that helps IT services essentially build automation and workflows and just really eliminate repetitive tasks. The philosophy is that you work with a lot of bumblebees, very cute little beans, these AI gadgets that actually makes your life well. And you stay focused on doing the things that matter, and you kind of get help from a fleet of cute bees to get the boring stuff done for you. So. And they work together, right? They work in groups, which I think is how human will collaborate with software down the line. Is the human will collaborate with software will collaborate with software, and eventually they'll just work cohesively as a group. So yeah, that's how the name came about.
Awesome. And then a little bit a reference to Transformers there as well.
That's
right. Yeah. When you first told me about it, I was like, cool. That's an interesting name there. And then So let's if you start professional, because I think on the personal side, I have something I want to show you actually before we dive into that. But on the professional side, my main interest is and also this is mainly also for the education, I think, for everyone, for the audience, is this idea of your experience at Amazon, the leadership principles. I believe there's 14 of them. Is that correct? 12, 14 of them?
They've increased to 16 now, but
yeah.
before in the beginning it was 14 leadership principles.
Great. And then pick any of them, like when you joined, and what was that experience like? I think, I really started sort of Pure Value full time. And, I started investing in 2016, which was being my 10th year. But that full time was 2018. And you and I both had a previous conversation before that. Shout out to Auto Premium and Van Sturden, right? So which Hexi was selling a e-commerce, or it was an e-commerce company with travel backpacks, and they were very fashionable, very cool. And I was doing automotive accessories. We were both doing cross-border e-commerce businesses back in college.
That's right.
For about the same period of time. And then 2018 was both a big career change for both of us. I started focusing on Pure Value full time, institutional investing, and sort of being fully into a professional as a professional investor. And you started your Amazon journey. So let's take our memory back to that time. How do you feel when you first joined? And then any examples, obviously, for those leadership principles and other things you've learned as well. Give me the 2018 version of Hexi at just freshly, I believe, 22 years old. I was 24 at the time. You were 22. So
yeah. Well, in college, Van Sturden was a good company. It was making a good margin, and it has the potential to go viral. So I was kind of pressed against the decision to either focus on Van Sturden full time and leave school, or focus on school full time and kind of put off the business. And during that summer, I had an internship at Amazon. And what really amazed me is how open Amazon is about learning and sharing knowledge. Internally, there are video recordings of really, really like early day Amazon, how they design certain systems. The really early architecture of AWS are all recorded, and knowledge sharing is wide available within Amazon. So I was very welcomed and to learn things. I was, as an intern, I was able to book meeting with some of the lead architects of very reputable systems like DynamoDB that I was able to just ask my questions. So I thought to myself, if I were to learn, and I've paid for mistakes many times, if I were to get paid while learning, that would be great. So let me do that first, right? And then one day I'll go back to building things myself again. So I've always known I would go back to the entrepreneurship world, but I want to take some time just to learn as much as I can, because there's a reason Amazon is what it is today. I have to just figure out what is it. And then that fast forward, that learning curve has kind of been with me for 6 years, just very steep, up until the very last year is when I start feeling like, okay, I'm kind of ready to move on. But yeah, it's primarily optimized for learning.
That's awesome. There's 2 points that immediately came across when you said that. I think one is it looks just right around that 22, 23 age, fresh out of college. That's something I talked to my team member about as well, that you get paid while learning, right? And so if you go on for a full apprenticeship, technically mentors will charge you money, let's say, for example. But if you're working and also and getting paid while also you can learn things that eventually you want to do, that's great. So I think a lot about now the role, for me at Pure Value kind of slightly switch where I'm going to be the more of a teacher role, and then they're coming along learning while getting paid and doing that. And I think that's a great experience for people fresh out of school, which brings another little bit more serious of a topic on this, the current job market with the white collar work, and especially for junior roles and things like that. We'll click save on that browser, as you know, and on that tab on this browser, as you know, my brain has this way of having many tabs open at the same time, so we'll click save on that. But the other thing to dive into is the access to previous files, right? So a good friend of mine who worked at Sequoia for 7 years on the investment team as a partner talked a lot about this as well. One clear example was they were able to access the original write-up of Don Valentine's thesis on Apple. He literally wrote today at Palo Alto, I met two young men called, both named Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. And this is what I think of their little company called Apple Inc. that's based out of an address. The address is actually Steve Wozniak's home, and it's a garage. That's, and Don Valentine was original. He had a whole thesis, right? But he goes home, as a whatever you call it, angel VC investor at the time. I don't think even there was a class of that. People doing Don Valentine was just doing it. And he wrote this whole memo about how he thought about Apple Inc. as a computer company, like a pure hardware computer company, and what he thought of those two people, of both Steves. So when my friend joined Sequoia, this is like right before, probably like 2018, 2019, this time, and he can access to something like 30 years ago, right? What were some things that you read or you remember that's from, when you joined, it's sort of the AWS was still at the high growth phase, obviously, but something you read maybe early on, something Jeff wrote in 97, something that maybe within AWS are some things that they've done that calls to your memory that what you were like, wow, this was impressive.
If I were to tap back into kind of AWS, the two biggest systems was EC2 and S3, right? That's the two most value-adding services of AWS.
Yep.
And when I started learning about kind of the architecture of S3, which is
RS3, right?
S3, Simple Storage Service, which is essentially like the backbone of the internet today. And if S3 has an outage, Netflix goes down, WhatsApp, everything goes down.
Was that the East 1 AWS region?
That was a different scenario. But there was one time when the internet went down because of S3 going down.
Got it.
So,
Simple storage system. Yep.
I was reading how much optimization there is to essentially improve the reliability of storage and to improve the availability of storage. So the two concepts, availability means that when I want to access some system, it is available for me to access. It's almost like on a computer, you can almost have 100% availability because it's right on the same file. But when things cross internet hops to store file for the first time, which is this early 2000s, people started to trust that file can get stored on a remote system.
Like a Dropbox, you mean? Like something like that?
Okay. Yeah. And then I can connect to that remote system and reliably get the file back. Like that way of thinking is relatively new. And Amazon hadn't gotten the priority right. This is the availability. They start advertising where 99.9999, so it's 6.9% available. And then they start pushing this metric to, okay, let's go to 7 nines, 8 nines. So they don't even say 999 anymore because it's like too many nines in there. So now they keep pushing it to 10 nines, blah, like beyond and beyond, right? So there is so much optimization that goes into just make the system reliable. And for that reason, everybody trusts S3 now. And obviously from a business point of view, like pushing reliability growth is like a very technical problem. But what it didn't say is on the business side, when everybody trusts the file system to be stored in a remote server, then you have that economy of scale that wasn't achievable when you have these personal computers like PCs. And that's where the data center became a thing. And AWS become a hosting service provider, kind of a business out of nothing.
I want to drill that point a little further. This is great. Now we're right into the weeds of over the technical things, and then things I want you to help everybody to get educated about. With that, because the economic scale in terms of from a storage, from a cost perspective, from an easy to access perspective, obviously probably multiple, but many things, right? Where do you think that sort of really clicked, both economically and also obviously to Amazon's vision at the time to build a web service? What was something that sort of early on that was, wow, okay, we're not going to buy this hard drive and store on-prem anymore, right? Even let's say for the podcast, right? We were advised, from many professional production companies to say, okay, we have a on-prem drive for all these how many gigabytes files and to store that, right? And then our operation team goes to buy these hard drives, right? What was something?
So there's two aspects when it comes to hardware infrastructure economy of scale. The first aspect is from the procurement side.
Okay.
When you centrally procure as a single entity, there's all sorts of discounts you get when you do this at scale. You buy more units, then manufacturers have higher certainty you're going to buy more units, and they can continue to invest in their capex, which is manufacturing plants, and and then they can produce at a lower cost, right? Versus when you are buying almost retail, then there's no such thing. The second aspect is the maintenance, which is actually a big hidden cost of
yeah.
when do you need to patch a service? How do you manage switch upgrades, kernel improvements, all that like maintenance work needs to manage by human. It used to be distributed humans that work at different companies that does this. Now it's all centralized. And that creates the opportunity to bring automation. When things are repeated so often, you start bringing automation to patching software, like plugging and unplugging cables, right? They used to be done by human who has knowledge. Now it just need to be centrally managed. So both of these became critical factors to kind of scaling the data center business of AWS. But what's really genius is that what unlocked this economy of scale is the technical innovation that has nothing to do with economy of scale. It is about pushing reliability and pushing availability, kind of inventing new ways to store data. That's the genius part, right? Is these two things that seems unrelated somehow got connected.
And is there it can be DynamoDB, right? Can be something that's you want to call. Is there particular something that was genius to you about that technical innovation and the enhanced capabilities later on as you worked at AWS and look at their internal stack? It was like, okay, this is and for the software engineers out there, right? You were saying, wow, this is a impressive piece of software engineering.
So actually,
from an innovation perspective,
from the technology point of view, it's impressive. But what is actually more impressive is the processes behind that created these technologies in the first place. So Amazon has, and I think this blends into the leadership principle we're discussing. Amazon has this strong focus on customer obsession, which is the number one leadership principle. So they go after what the customers want, and they do whatever it takes for that to happen. And as a hosting business, it's very clear what the customer wants is things to be available and to be reliable. So they'll do whatever it takes. And Amazon developed this new process that every time when an incident happened, we do a very, very in-depth postmortem about what had caused the issue and what are some things we can do to prevent this from happening ever again. And that process of continuously refining your internal structure to optimize for this one goal, which is customer satisfaction, started to create new ways that Amazon manage reliability and looking to how we could prevent things from happening that sometimes things come out like approvals, right? Like human make errors. So we need another person to cross-check when certain things hits production. Like that sorts of processes come out of these incidents, which improve the availability over time.
And then, great, doing those post-mortem, give us more detail in the sense where like, what was the process like? Do we write that? Obviously, if there's a bug on the code, so we debug that. We have the record of history and what caused what. I think if I'm recalling some of my, my brain sometimes has this memory chip function, if you will. I think you told me during your intern or the first year you started, one of your colleagues deleted some file that caused caused some problems, things like that.
Yeah. So in 2017, there was an intern at Amazon.
Yeah. This is way back, by the way. I haven't thought about this in 10 years almost.
There was an intern at Amazon that deleted a file because files represented by slash and directory names. Yeah. So he just deleted a file because, he was deleting some test things, and that file happened to be a central file that keeps the entire S3 simple storage service together.
The entire S3 together?
That's correct. Yes. Okay. And then the entire simple storage service was essentially down for about many hours, close to a day in 2017. And that brought down Netflix, that brought down a lot of the internets. Yeah. You'll read that in the news.
Yeah. Can I? And then for the non-software engineering focus, can I dive into this on a consumer example of Netflix? So doing that, can we understand as in Netflix stored the previous recorded movies and shows content on there, right? Now they're accessing everybody who's calling from their home service, their home smart TV, it's essentially calling to the same file and again distributed to watch it, correct? So let's say 2017, we have House of Cards. So they want to watch season 3 of House of Cards. That was not available anymore. Is that the actual
during
outcome?
The outage, yes.
Okay.
During the outage.
Okay.
You can't visit a website. Your HR software is not loading.
Uh-huh.
Lots of things are just like not happening.
Yeah. But the actual database itself is not deleted, or is it actually...
No, the data is not deleted. It's not accessible during that time.
Got it. And it's accessible maybe internally at AWS?
No.
Okay, no.
Until they recover. So
and
there's
then,
a path to recovery.
Okay.
Right?
And then from a technology standpoint, how do you guys recover that? From a technical standpoint?
From a technical standpoint...
Yeah, since the file is deleted. Yeah.
Recovery typically involves understanding like why things are not working and immediately patch like the things that are broken. So those typically happens fast. It's like it doesn't take too long.
Yeah.
But because everything is down, right, the actual recovery process take a lot longer because you can imagine like traffic that used to flow through started queuing up.
Yeah.
So by the time you recover, your gates is open again. Yeah. But your throughput is still at what it used to be. But you now have these like hours of flooded traffic that are waiting. Yeah. So it become congested and it creates a new storm of problems that you have to overcome. Like you have to over provision during the recovery phase and gradually like get the traffic through and eventually recover. So it's a slow process that takes time.
Understood. And then on the postmortem question, what was those process like doing?
So the postmortem is really interesting because the first thing it does is it almost anonymize the person or the system that is causing the issue. So the first culture I think Jeff wanted to set is this is a process for improvements. It's not a process for labeling and pointing fingers, right? Okay. So it's strictly focused on what had exactly happened, not who did it or why come together because of like a person's action or not. The point is to not make it something that kind of use as political tool against other people.
What happened to the intern, by the way? To the person, or the person who was to delete it?
I do not know.
Okay.
So you write down exactly minute by minute what each system is doing and what has changed during that minute. And you kind of walk through the entire timeline of the incident, right? From before, when things were normal to at this minute, we start to see traffic increase by 50%. And then at that minute, we start seeing error rates spike up. And at this other minute, everything started to be impacted.
I see.
At X minute, on-call engineer checked in to the issue. We even measure that. At Y minute, the on-call engineer ran this script to test if this is the issue. And then eventually, at this minute, we understand the root cause and started some sort of fix. So everything about such an incident is recorded verbatim on a timeline. And that is used as the raw material for analyzing how do we improve the process. So we'll focus on, say, it took 35 minutes for the engineer to check in. Then what is the process we can do to reduce that time, because 35 for certain incidents is like too much, right? And then sometimes it's, okay, it took the on-call, let's say 60 minutes to run the scripts that fix the issue. Now the question is, can that 60 minute be reduced down to 10 minutes? What does it take? If this is a recurrent issue, then we should ideally automate as much out of that 60 minutes as possible. So next time when it happens, it takes 5, not 60. So all of these goes into developing additional systems, sometimes secondary system that helps mitigate issues like this and accelerate the recovery. So what you're seeing behind the scene, there's a lot of both technical engineering as well as process engineering that goes into making this reliable.
Makes sense. And process a lot of times is the know-how that connects with technology and their blend. And it's something you mentioned about the not pointing fingers, the politics, the people side of it, but focusing on facts, right? This reminds me of sort of, I think generally this first principle thought of when you deal with problems, you look at the facts at hand, and the facts alone will tell you if you're right or wrong, right? And obviously in my industry, Warren Buffett talks about this a lot, as in it's not your emotions or your opinion that makes the investment right or wrong. It's the facts alone, right? So to use the example, I often sort of during a certain time, I will give you a good example that get asked this question. And then my answer was I learned their philosophies. I don't learn exactly what they do at that particular moment.
Mm-hmm.
In 2021, Charlie Munger bought a lot of Alibaba. And I go, if I was in the room with Charlie, I'll tell him you're wrong. And he lost like 55% on that particular position. That's okay for a 96-year-old who's highly achieved, and people make mistakes. That's okay. Eventually he exited, by the way. Even though he doubled down initially when dropped 50, he bought more, then dropped 75, he eventually exited. But anyhow, my thing is that which later Buffett admitted in this 2015 merger that he did with Kraft Heinz and 3G Capital, and he made a mistake on paying too much. All these things, people tend to sort of question. But what I see is this more cynical. I'm using the example because there's the cynical view, right? Of they go, look at Buffett's later mistakes in those sort of 10 to 20 years of his career, then why would you say he's the GOAT? Why would you learn from? Well, I go, because his philosophies generally apply well, and the results-wise, he still did better than the most. So in a sense where not everything Amazon or Jeff did was correct, right? But it means that applying the philosophies to what you do now, what we can do now, right? So that particular philosophy of looking at facts is something that I think we both adapted from, even learning from different people, but that commonality of thought. And the other thing is this Jeff's long-term vision, and you probably learned that Amazon indulges on this thought of he famously said this during the dot-com bubble crashing. Now we're probably at the rising phase, but he said this sort of during the towards the tail end of that, saying the market is the short-term voting machine in the long-term weighing machine, right? Doing what truly what matters that leads to that. There's something that where you look at your career there, right, from a short-term and long-term perspective, and this being a benefit being close to you as a close friend. At a time, I remember when you first joined, I think about a month after I visited you in your home in Seattle, and you were going, I think we was in my typical fashion that I don't think I was particularly on time at the time to get to your work, because we were both supposed to go to your office at about 9:15 or 9 o'clock. And then I remember this very particularly. Before we walk out the door, you said, I said we're gonna be here at 9, not 9:15. Because you have to be there on time at the very beginning of that day. And then later we had an exchange about how it was adoption process for you when you first joined, right? You feel the work, maybe the first 6 months, there was quite a bit load. But later, I also remember the 2023 version of you. You go, wow, this is so, I've pretty much learned everything I can here. I can handle everything there. You were a leader on your team. You sometimes might even feel like certain new entrants are not as qualified in many ways or not as competent as you are. So you went from basically kind of the work was too much to handle. Let's say you're a little bit overwhelmed at the time, and then to later you'd be like, wow, this is a piece of cake. Well, what's that? Obviously it took 5 years and a half. I feel the same way with my career. Probably took even longer, about 7 years to know what I'm doing. But what was that process like? And then I want to use the example because it's something really teaches people about long-term thinking, right? Because if people just focus on the short term, and I think you know what I'm talking about. We had a mutual acquaintance at the time who you gave me a reference to saying, he was complaining about the work and not being very optimistic about how he can improve that. And then eventually he didn't build enough confidence at Amazon, right? So what was that process like?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's a piece of cake. Even by the time I left, I think it's still challenging.
Yep.
By no means it's
Yep.
easy.
Uh-huh.
And also, I think by the time I left, I think it was challenging in a different way.
Okay.
That wasn't very interesting to me.
Okay.
But so it's not that it become easy. Yes, I may be familiar with things at that point, but there's still plenty of challenges. Just the skill sets is required to solve those challenges aren't within my immediate interest.
Do you mind segue into that real quick? Like what will be the skill sets different?
Yeah. So when you start out as an entry-level engineer, you're typically out of school. School don't teach you how to build reliable systems.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to learn that. You have to learn working with others. You have to learn quality assurance. You have to learn working with product team to build system that actually people want. You need to learn how to run project management, and then you need to learn how to mentor new team members. Somebody who you used to be, you need to help them up to speed.
Yep.
You need to learn how to manage projects with competing priorities from your sister teams and how to collaborate. So these are all kind of like the learning things that you get when you're entry level to about senior level. And then once you reach the senior level, you're kind of like this trusted leader in an organization where upper management will come to you to ask questions, right? And then new entrants would come look up to you as examples. So you hold a lot of responsibility, and you almost get put at a very high bar.
Yep.
So when you at that stage when you're performing, you're really like increasing your scope, increasing your breadth as much as the depth. Likely you're increasing your breadth. You're increasing your ability to manage more stakeholders, handle competing priorities, and then kind of deliver still through your team by empowering them and giving them the right mentorship. And sometimes if something falls off, you have to go pick up the slack yourself. That's what the role change happened throughout that number of years.
Understood.
The journey there was a little painful for an extroverted person like me. Just being able to sit down and think for like 10 hours.
We both had that.
Was difficult. It was difficult. And sometimes it's frustrating because the code doesn't work. And you get to the point where you just stop thinking about why it doesn't work. You're just like, I'm so frustrated. And you have to learn new habits of patience. You have to sometimes just go for a walk and get a new perspective. Right. And that's when you realize a lot of the times the decision you make is not based on the quantity of work you're putting. It's because of the quality.
Correct.
And it takes 10 minutes to think through a solution that I could have get stuck on for like 3 days. And to the outside world, my output is the same. But internally, I either spent 10 minutes or I spent 3 days. Nobody knows. So I actually have a great example. So,
that's right.
So
go ahead.
The first year I was really struggling. Like I was not getting anything done. Like if I were to measure my performance, like 1 out of 10, I'm probably performing at 2.
Okay. Is that right around?
Which means I'll probably get kicked out of the company if I keep performing that way for like another year or 2.
Yeah. So this is your first year official work.
That was the first year. Okay. It was really difficult.
Yeah.
And then I said to myself, okay, if we can't overcome this, you can't overcome like entrepreneurship. So figure this out, Hexi. And I started getting smart about how I approach my day-to-day. I started recording what I do 24 hours on my screen. And on the weekend, I would take kind of a recording of the 50 hours I worked during the weekdays. And then I look at like, what am I spending time on? And then I ask myself, why am I spending like 6 hours doing this? Like, what is the total output that I'm expecting? And then very quickly, I realized I'm spending a lot of time going back and forth on things that would have been short if I had gained consensus with team members early on. So I just started investigating how I'm spending my time and make adjustments. And 2 months later, I would say like my output just like tripled. So this is definitely a skill thing, not a talent thing. Like it's hard for talent to go 3x. But if you do the right things, then your output 3x, right?
So the 3x was come from a systematic management of your attention, focus, time management, your how you do things. What was that change?
It is very specific about how I spend my time. So I look
from
at
a
systematically how I spend my time.
Work perspective or everything.
Work perspective.
Okay, not like how often do you need a meal between whatever.
Not as much.
Not as specific that. Okay.
Yeah, I specifically ask, why am I spending 3 hours writing this piece of code that didn't end up contributing to the final business outcome?
And was that piece of code that you write, let's say the misalignment of that less important work, let's say, was that somebody else assigned that to you? You were needed to work on or your software engineering skill wasn't up to the par that you needed to do that for that particular vertical? What was the reason? The 3 hour sort of non-productive.
So give an example, right? When you need to build like a piece of software, you not only need to kind of build a solution, you also need to test your solution. And you need to get consensus by your team to agree that this is the right solution. So what I did before was I used to spend a lot of time just like iterating on the solution myself. So I would kind of put a version out like after 1 day. And then when I started like aligning with my team, they're like, oh, there's like a way easier solution. I was like, that's right. So then I scrapped the whole thing and I started building the next iteration. So like 3 iterations in, nothing has been like useful yet, but I've already spent so much time. And majority of the time is spent on like testing a solution that don't even matter. So the simple change is like, okay, why don't I just like get their alignment first? Why don't I just like write down what I want to do on paper instead of in real code? And then once they agree, this is the right approach, then I go actually do the heavy lifting of testing and writing it out. Just by doing that, I cut out half of my time spent on writing code because
Wow.
I don't need to do that anymore.
So essentially, that was a communication function. That was understanding team alignment in terms of the piece of work that you're going to do, and then the communication piece was first. Then you commit. Right.
It's almost like understand if you're doing is valuable upfront as quickly as possible.
Got it.
Before you're going into the full depth of doing it.
Yeah, and clicking back on something you said slightly earlier on this, it was a painful time, a growth process, let's say, and because as an extrovert, it took some time for you to sort of face yourself in mirror and then work on the code. And I can think of plenty of similarities there between from my journey too. And also the other point, I mean, I don't want to lose these two. They're very important in a sense. So one is this: if you are actually born as an extrovert, there's a lot of work you have to do internally, the solitude journey. I just had a conversation with a good friend of mine, a college roommate, this weekend on FaceTime. He's saying, solitude is different from loneliness. Loneliness is you feel lonely. That's not healthy. It's not good. Solitude is freaking necessary for anybody to be successful. And then another high school roommate of mine reminded me every time, he and you know who he is. Max talk about this all the time. He's like, every time he wants to do something hard, and shout out to Max, but he says he thinks about why I used to tell him. I said, everybody wants to be a beast until it's time to be one. And a lot of time, the time to be a beast is actually going to solitude and face what you need to face. So that value, but the other thing is the quality over. So 2 points I want to clear is the quality. It's the quantity leading to quality. Is that a lot of times, I'm sure for you too, during that time, I would look at 7, 9, 12, 15 different companies in a day. And I always there were times about 16-hour days to go through things. Later on, by 2023, right around your time frame, by 2023, I could easily work 4 hours in a day and get the same output. I could literally just put in $30 a week. I know my firm will make north of 7 figures. I know our return will be 25% CAGR. Not saying it's guaranteed, but I know that the odds of likelihood of that success is a lot higher than the beginning. And then later, it takes me probably 3-4 hours, which is, let's say if I do a 4-hour workday, then in a summer on vacation or something like that, I could cross-reference 5 to 7 different companies in one industry. It does lead me to believe in, and choose whichever one you want to click on, believe in certain amount of quality has to be put in, sort of that 10,000, 8,000 hours, whatever that is, then you can really limit it. And then what actually led me to believe through this process is that actually the more successful version of that growth is actually come from knowing what not to do. Like these days, many investment cases, or depends on the 3 P's we go by, the product, people, price, I can eliminate, say, 90% of companies we are not even interested in investing in. But that process came from, at the beginning, I said yes to everything. I was like, I'm going to look at every freaking scenario, right? So was there a sort of this quality built from large, vast of quantity side? And then love for you to dive into that extroversion side as well.
The example I gave was about like a shift, but majority of the growth came from just writing software, right?
Actually doing it. Yeah.
Actually doing it. Vastly come from using certain technologies once and then using them again and then again and again. And you start getting really good at solving the problem. You start getting really good at knowing the problem and whether you want to solve it at all in the first place.
Yeah.
See, that's an interesting philosophical change, right? When you first start out, you get handed a problem, you think of 5 solutions, you compare them, and then you propose like 2.
Okay.
And then you say, I consider 2, this is the better one. Let's go with it.
Yep.
Sometimes you get pushed back, but generally, like that's how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you see enough problems, technical problems,
mm-hmm.
that you start questioning, like, do I even want to solve that problem at all?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that worth solving?
Mm-hmm.
I can eliminate majority of the complexity by not dealing with this problem in the first place.
What not to
and rephrase the requirements from the customer in a different way,
mm-hmm.
so it fits into my architecture.
Yep.
It's different, right? Different stages is
Brilliant.
different.
Brilliant. Yeah. Elon talked about this, and there's a video people can find it on. He was talking about it in front of, I think, Dragon 9 or something at SpaceX, Falcon 9 at SpaceX headquarters. It's a video in 2021, I believe. He was talking about the worst thing for a smart engineer to do is to optimize something that should not exist, because smart people love to optimize things, love challenges. but he's saying, ask, should this thing even exist? He had some of the smartest engineers at SpaceX and try to build something. He's saying sometimes his job is to go in there is to cancel projects, if you will. So that makes a lot of sense. And the extroversion side, was there people have this as let's say trying to be helpful to fresh grad or whoever that is. People think, especially because investment on this one as a more of an IC role, investor is actually easier to explain. You have to do the reading, and generally it's not a 500 people getting together to make one decision kind of decision making anyway. Berkshire has 25 people at headquarters, and Buffett calls the shot, and there's two other sort of portfolio managers he hired later on after he's 70. Because it seems counterintuitive that going to an organization like a Microsoft, like AWS, that you're going there with a large campus, right? Beautiful office buildings, lots of peers. I remember you mentioned the banana culture at Amazon. They're a little bit on the cheaper side for meals and things like that. But still, if you go grab a banana, you can see a teammate and things like that. So generally, it should be like this vibe, good vibes and hang out with people. Kind of obviously very different than your USC life. But still, there's people around. Why was that hard for an extrovert to adjust to actually do high quality work? Because people might perceive that type of job is that you have a lot of people around you and you get to kind of hang out. Why is it hard?
It is because the nature of the work is alone. You're dealing with a technical problem that almost definitely has an optimal solution, and you just have to work and find it. When you're building a piece of software, you're really spending a lot of time constructing it and making sure it works. So think about when you're doing kind of like a construction work. Like if you're just putting bricks layer by layer and make sure it doesn't shake, that is, even though you work with your crew, it's still kind of a lonely job. It's the same in that front. Like you as much as you have a good campus and whatnot, like the nature of your job and the feedback you get is coming from a machine, and that is different from if it's coming from a human. That's like you're doing marketing. Like it doesn't matter how alone you are, you're benchmarked against other people's reaction, right? So your output is measured against human versus against machine.
Yeah, no, that's a good. Would be so. This can even apply to. We're talking about software engineering. This can even apply to you can be at Boeing HQ, you can be at the factory building an aerospace engine, and there's might be a lot of people next to you, literally fabrication parts and stuff like that. But the output is that can this plane fly safely?
You're trying to master the machine. You're not trying to master human mind, right? Compared to investments, you're almost like trying to master the counterintuitive part of the human mind. But you're still dealing with human, more or less, because you're betting against a market of other bettors.
Correct. So there's a slightly different version of sort of the solitude or loneliness we had to deal with. Was that for me, it was more about the physical aspect of not being with other people, right? So wake up, I'm in my one-bedroom apartment in Pasadena, sitting on a couch, just like listening to news and reading about the markets. There's nobody next to me. There's no banana station. I don't meet anyone. That part was lonely, right? So not seeing people at all, like literally people. That probably made, I look back that 6-7 year time, that made me even cherish friendship more, right? Because that seeing people means fun. F-U-N, literally. Like people equal fun. Because non-fun times are work times, right? And then on the weekends I go, who can I hang out with? And how do we schedule this travel to do that? I see. But you're saying because the work nature itself, even though you go into a large group, and obviously before COVID, you were, and it's great at the time, you experienced this pre-remote work era too, right? So you were in the office all the time and you see people. But that does not erase the idea that the fact that your main function is to deal with the machine and make sure the machine is optimized. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And obviously the work relationship is quite different, and meetings and things like that. Then, so to click sort of a little bit wrap around this chapter on any of the leadership principles, any things that you want to call on, or meetings or things like that. I mean, there's so many things I can think of with, writing memos before meetings and how meetings are run at Amazon, famously being more efficient than others. There's innovative approaches there. You can click on all those things, and we talk about, or how work relationship is different than social relationships, right? You were obviously a student club leader at USC. I think for the audience to know, that's Hexi was very social in college, and then but being hanging out with friends at a dining hall or a social function in college is very different than, let's say, sitting down at a meeting.
I feel like the social aspect is probably changing for everybody.
Okay.
Like when you're in college versus when you leave. Because your kind of area has just shrink, right? And the people you deal with just shrink dramatically after you graduate.
Yep.
I actually want to pivot this back to a little bit more about like Amazon and what I learned there.
Great.
One other process or culture
Mm-hmm.
at Amazon is people like to write. People like to just kind of write down their thought, and we'll start a meeting reading something that people write and
Yep.
and go from there. What I really picked up from the habit is the fact that the process of writing is a process of consolidation.
Correct.
It is like language is a really, really special thing. And this is going to help with our AI conversation later on as well.
Great.
That language reflects how you think. And the more precise you can put it, the more consolidated and distilled your thought is. So if you can represent an idea from a big idea in one page, that means you have really thought through it. You've not only thought through how you want to express it, you also thought through how it wants to be perceived. You have already thought through how it wants to be read. And I think that is very powerful of a skill set, is to consolidate your thinking using text, using like the process of writing and revisioning. When I draft something, typically when I finish the first draft, it's like 20% of the done process. There's so many iterations that goes into it. What you end up seeing is this one-page text, but behind the scene, it's just a lot of consolidated thinking. So it's a process that helps you kind of iterate yourself and communicate back and forth. And I really think that's a valuable skill that is underappreciated, especially with ChatGPT being around helping you write things nowadays.
Man.
It takes away your ability to use that as a process
100%.
to distill thoughts.
Yeah, that's my biggest worry for this trend. And the thing is, I talk to my wife about this a lot, is that we're not that far from, you're 29. We're not that far from 23, 24-year-olds, but there is a gap between pre-GPT people and post-GPT people. I didn't have Bloomberg Terminal. I didn't have whatever fancy software. I go on each company's little website, just click through and read the filings. That builds intuition. You wrote, by the way, Hexi's on Substack. So what's your Substack?
HexiShao.substack.com.
HexiShao.substack.com. Read his stuff. Very good. I mean, this is also pre-Substack era kind of in a way. It wasn't as published. So for like the investment old heads, there's Howard Marks out there, right? You probably heard of him. And luckily, I met him at one at the conference in 2018. It was super, super, super nice to me. The fact that I told him I just graduated college and was just want to attend the conference, it was a grand. At the time, it cost me a fortune to go to one conference, and then he was graciously talking to me for like almost 25 minutes and just go, "Wow, okay, you just graduated college, so I would like to talk to this young man before I talk to anybody else." Anyhow, and he wrote memos for like 3+ decades. The writing and Jeff Bezos' letters, right? So the writing process, and also seeing, and also here's the thing: you don't have to be a natural reader or writer growing up. You can change, right? You and I had this conversation when we were basically kids at that time. We're saying, you said you were super good at math, right? Your middle school version, Hexi, but you were not as interesting in literature, right? In writing, as let's say in middle school, as your natural strengths, but later on you pick it up as your super weapon, right? In a way. So, and then I went through my journey of writing the annual. I told, again, another mutual friend of ours, good mutual friend who actually introduced us at USC, right, Xiao, that I told him, I said, the idea of, even though at the time I had a minimum amount of clients, but still I was writing annual letters. And then that process, and this is January 19th, just fresh off of another one on the 31st, that process, like only the writer knows how much it clears your mind of preciseness of thinking in systems of what you truly want to say. And I believe this is from a Russian author of the novel War and Peace, saying, he wished he had more time so he could write a shorter book. In a sense where a lot of writing is about deleting. It's about what this is too wordy that, like, I look about my 7 different annual letters, probably the worst one's the one I wrote too much. The best one is the one I was getting to the point with less words. Every time I want to do 10 pages and end up doing 14. This year, I think it was 12. So getting there. I think this process it's so essential to how we do things and how we understand our own system to process information. Then that leads to knowledge, and hopefully there's some wisdom there, right? So because otherwise we are in an information bombarded world, then we don't have a way to unpack that process well. So do you think of anything that sort of you want to call on that's seems to me at least concerning that this generation, they don't spend as much time sort of let alone reading. Reading is a long attention span work, obviously, but writing it's something I think is essential and does not have to be long. It can just be one paragraph to describe what you're thinking at the current moment. Well, how do you look at a case study of a business example or anything like that? Anything?
As in, like, kind of with the new technology that comes around.
Yes. Yeah.
Writing is a big one. People don't write anymore. They just type some ideas.
Yeah. Where in the process do you think that eliminated the thinking process? Or do you think, let's say, it's perfectly okay, we type a few prompts here and there and then write the whole piece?
No, I don't think it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think writing is a big one.
Mm.
And with AI, like image generation and stuff, we might take away our ability to compose art as well. Because a lot of art is you're trying to compose something and then you try like one thing that's random. It's kind of like genetic mutation. It's like everything's formal except this one thing is different, and then that form a new form of art, right? Like it could potentially kind of stifle some of that aspect as well.
And then maybe this is something, let's see if you resonate on something I thought about, where may even not have to do with the form, because there's 4 forms, right? There's listening, speaking, talking, writing, and reading, right? So listening and reading are inputs, writing and speaking are outputs. And I think you remember I said this when we were hanging out a lot during COVID in 2020. I was saying at the time, especially during COVID, my input-output ratio was like 25-1. I was reading a lot, getting a lot of information, and then Roy and I might have a podcast for a little bit or something. My output, like I see one friend every 2 months or something, and then I just output everything. I think this idea of attention span is probably behind it. So because honestly, like I tell people this all the time. I go, and my team as well, especially, like, I don't know how to really almost teach this to people in a sense where if you can sit there to do 3 hours of anything, you are going to be very successful. If you can't, you just won't. That's just my very biased opinion. Like I can sit there and watch a 3-hour podcast, be linearly focused, and I'm not interested much in short term. And then mutual friend of ours, how Yun says this, which he'll up on a podcast soon. I always check his Instagram. I said, give me your phone and check what's your time on. My average daily time is always like 13 minutes. And I post a lot because I go on there, I read whatever is interesting, first 5 posts, I repost it if it's interesting, or I post something I want to post, and I get off of it. I maybe click on a few good friends, that's it. But what's truly interesting, I would sit there, watch 4 quarters of basketball game. There's so much nuance between the details when you actually see the footage. Highlights are not a way to understand the game. Or a 3-hour podcast or a 2-hour page of reading. Like there's no way almost to substitute that. So I think it's almost the form might not matter as much if people can listen for 2 hours first to begin with. Then maybe they can start reading for 35 minutes. Then maybe they can start writing for 12 minutes. Maybe that's a way of, like, at least for me, I definitely wasn't sitting there going to write 5 hours in the beginning, right? So maybe that's the way to get into it. Maybe attention span is something, at least call me out if I'm wrong there, but I really thought about this especially through my internal team building for the last year of how to instill this in people, and also down the road, parenthood as well. I think about attention span. So anything, and the last thing is my wife says this a lot of the time, video games are good for you. Because it depends on certain types, but my wife always says that if you sit there and play, obviously the oldest form is like a chess or something, right? Poker. But if you sit there and play certain games for like 2 hours, they're strategy games or something, and then you're thinking through, I agree with her. It's better than TikTok, right? So we kind of align, at least in my household, on attention span. What's your thought on that? Or maybe there's a different angle to help people to slice that.
No, I definitely agree with what you're saying. It's not like an AI thing. It's been since the social media, really, attention span started to decrease and continue to decrease, right?
Yeah.
Even for podcasts, these are long form podcasts. We might have to cut it out to snippets. It's easier for people to consume because everybody's so spoiled now with content. And there's also like partially because there's an over explosion of content, so it's like hard to get really high quality content continuously. So there are factors that contribute to it, but attention span is definitely one thing. I'm on the big, like, kind of being present camp. So
Yeah.
I love to just like drive and think sometimes, just float.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we hang out for a couple days at a time on retreats, or we watch a game 7 together of the full game, right?
Yeah.
Not just see
But
it.
I'm also guilty of like the social media as well. I also spend like 30 minutes to an hour a day on social media.
Yeah. That's okay.
You know, just short term, quick dopamine rush
Yeah.
happens.
But you still have the capacity to do something for 2 hours or longer. Right?
Yeah. I haven't met a lot of people who literally can't. So if there's like plenty of people out there that can't focus for like more than 30 minutes, then it's definitely a problem.
That might be your elite circle of engineering friends, I'm assuming. I'm just guessing. Because if people want to write software or design something, like even hardware engineering, they probably have to stay there focused for some time. I noticed at least there's different styles, but sort of the investor circle of friends can do that as well. Some are very different. Some are very speculative, some are quick, but they can read. They can just sit there and read something for a while. But I do still reading and sort of being among society, if you will, there are, I think, our generation as well, right? Late millennial, early Gen Z kind of type that can't really focus for too long. That's something related, and obviously, and way bigger topic of ADHD drugs being overprescribed and all those type of things. But I do notice that's something that people.
I believe it.
Right. Yeah. Or last small example to click this chapter is, or like at the gym, people, could you enjoy the music and being flow for a little bit instead of being on the, people sit on the machine and then have to go on the phone for a while in between sets? Like in between sets is one of my favorite flow time. So I'm thinking like I need to do the next set in a minute anyway. I know there's a video to be watched within a minute. Sure, I can optimize that by watching another video, but really,
but now on the phone betting on sports. I think that's what they're doing.
Do you see what I'm saying, right? Like just that minute and a half between sets at the gym, is it really necessary to get on a short form video at the time? But anyhow, so okay, let me click on a few topics that are interesting. I wrote before. So as always, we went with your flow and spontaneous, and then. From the information you were presenting, and so we went spontaneous for the first part. I'm thinking about a couple of things, and then let's see if that makes sense. I'll just call these points out. Anything you want to add? One is constraints are helpful as a startup founder now. I think I thought about this a lot, and I accidentally mentioned it earlier. Of 7 years not having access to any advanced. I mean, I could afford it later on, but I just didn't. Our returns were good. We didn't need it, and I didn't until I go, okay, I want to provide really first class infrastructure for the new team members that I bring on board. I go, there's no point to have fancy software because the numbers are the numbers. The more important thing, especially in modern public markets investing, is understanding the thesis behind it. Private markets too, right? Access to pitch book, these things, like people know what the numbers like, but what do you actually think? What matters a lot more. So the constraints of larger budgets doesn't lead to great outcomes. Incumbents, like any thoughts there?
I agree. Constraints are helpful.
Because you worked at a $3 trillion company before, and then you are a startup founder. So.
Yeah, as a startup founder, you really have to make a lot out of. It helps you prioritize better because now there's like you don't have these fancy, enticing option that you've never kind of experienced and doesn't really add as much value.
Yep.
You're forced to do the most essential thing, right? Because you're all like in a survival mode. So I think it is the case. I can even feel like before I raise like a round of angel investments versus afterwards, I have more options thanks to the funding, but also like I might not be utilizing and making my time like in the most efficient way because some of those options might not matter as much. It may appear to be important, but might not be important. So I do think constraints help you build the right things that you don't over-engineer, especially as like when you're working at a large organization, like you're trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
Now you're in a scrappy, small organization of like 1-2 person. Your job is not to build perfect. Your job is to move quickly. So and typically being perfect and moving quickly is like the opposite direction. Yeah. So absolutely, constraints are helpful. And appreciate the constraints and appreciate economic downturn that resets things. Like Those are great opportunities.
Yeah, and then I think I watched something this morning. Actually, happens to be on the way here, shared in our family group chat of the there's this rule at the Marine Corps of make a decision based on 80% information. Right, a lot of times you can't get perfect information. When you have 80%, when you have enough, you move. This perfection is the enemy of getting things done. Or perfection is the enemy of even getting good things done. Sometimes good enough, it's just, you have to move, and through moving, you get more knowledge that way. So that's and I think I'm sure those perspectives sort of bring out different characteristics and personalities where your skill sets are different too, right? Shine a light on that, like how you see yourself operate into one very $3 trillion company, the most profitable arm too, right? For those who don't know, AWS, Amazon Web Services, is still the leading world. Especially when Hexi was there, they were absolutely destroying Google Cloud at the time, and then Azure was the second coming, but they were the number one, right? So and now working at Bumblebee, we're working with specifically with small and medium software providers, right? Service providers, and how do you see yourself
Well,
operating differently?
and
Too?
to quote Robert yourself, the skills that took you where you are aren't going to be the skill that takes you where you're going.
True.
So
Thank you. True.
before, I didn't have the skill of embracing solitude, and I had to learn that. And I have to move to the other side of the spectrum. But now, my main job is to delight my end customer. So my outcome is no longer measured by machine, actually quite actively measured by human responses. So I have to make another 180 shift back to where I was. And after a few years, it's no longer as easy to make that. Like it's no longer as if I just went back to my college self. I have to actively work on
That's different.
Being a people person because my natural instincts now fall back to being a solitude person. So it's a new challenge of going back to the old way. It's easier than the first swing because I've been there before as a very extroverted person, but now kind of circling back to that side is the new challenge now that wasn't there before.
Yeah, and this is, I want to use more precise words to describe this, the distinguish between the two, and also something I just came up, I think you relate to. There's this difference between delighting customers, facing a machine optimized piece of engineering, but then also managing people. So there's like almost their nuances are quite big here, in a sense where the skills that you quoted me on, the sense where what took us here might not be something, the same skills that gets us to where we want to go. I almost thought about this sort of when I read this book recently and very rigorously, if you will, because I absolutely desperately need the skill, high output management by Andy Grove. It's with me on every flight. And then I fit with my improved reading speed after 10 years working on it. I finished it already, but I'm reading the book twice because I need to take everything he has in, and I don't feel like I fully took it in. If team is not, I'm going to quote a bunch of stuff that Reed Hastings also helped me, that particular podcasting that's like a best on there, that helped along with Andy Grove. Your team is not a family. Your team should be, they have this concept of adequate performance leads to a generous solvents package. Your internal management system should be different than the external client CRM, customer relationship management system, which you're speaking about. I think it's almost this, and I spoke about this, believe it or not, on the on the previous podcast with another guest, Michael. That was, it's almost for me, it's being very difficult internally, because generally I want to be delightful to other people, and to actually hold standards internally, and that's and also because of the skills that got us here. You talk about the optimized machine part. Investment work is a highly IC job, individual contributor job, in a sense where I expect people to be self-reliant, self-sufficient, self-resourceful. But a lot of times you actually, as a leader, you need to be there to, I talk about leadership as service. You need to be able to help them. So the assumption is, so before, let's say, I take the granted, sort of taking this concept for granted, if you will, that I assume you guys in our friends group circle think I'm a decent friend. It's because I give everybody a lot of freedom in a way, and then myself the room to breathe things, to be who we are, right? But a lot of times when you want to drive cross-functional organization, you have to sort of drive in alignment. Then with customers, what you're speaking about is this idea of essentially their happiness is your outcome. That's your output, right? So then you have to be in a service mode to a different degree, right? Not saying yes to everything you want, but to a different degree. So how do you, I think, obviously from that aspect, we're dealing with different things here. They're both people skills, if you will. How do you see that transition period require you to almost to be a different person depending on the scenarios? Or do you think you just entirely become a different person? What I've observed generally is that behaviors do change your habit patterns over time. And eventually you do become a different person. So, I was definitely the least corporate person who's at the same time also reasonably successful in business, if you will, right? But now I'm definitely see the need of becoming a little bit more corporate rigorous, if you will, which I do not like. As in, I do not think there's too much merit in doing that as a human being to exist, because I think that limits a lot of one's individuality, agency, freedom, a lot of ways, right? Rather wear Joe Rogan hoodie on a podcast than wear my suits. But there's a certain level you have to hold to. So there's a lot of layers to it. How do you think about this changing behavior in terms?
Yeah, I approach it a little differently.
Go ahead. Yeah.
And if it were to kind of put myself in your shoe,
Yeah.
I would say that there is a certain way that we as founders like to work.
point.
And we do not appreciate authority. So there's a certain
You appreciate more than I do. I do not appreciate authority.
rebellion, against authority.
Yep.
But that doesn't necessarily represent how other people appreciate work. So it's very natural for us to put the lens of how we see the world onto other folks, especially people who join your team.
Yep.
But oftentimes, a lot of people just would appreciate the guidance, would appreciate a bit more structure, would appreciate kind of what you dislike yourself. So when you look at things from that lens, like if you're hiring someone, you're not trying to hire yourself, then it's okay to give them the structure, to give them the destination, and make things less ambiguous. Don't let them free float, because that's like not a job for everybody.
Yeah.
And then in terms of how do you structure it, once you kind of accept this fact, then you accept there are different parts of your work that sometimes you have to be more free, sometimes you have to be more structured, and you just kind of fit in your schedule. I'm still navigating this because when I'm working on engineering, I'm in a very different mode than when I'm working on like customer-facing activities. So I'm still seeing if it's possible to do both at the same time. I think it's going to be hard to do both well on the same day, but it's possible, I think, to do well on different days. Certain days are for engineering, for like solving technical problems, and other days are for kind of being the salesperson, customer obsessed, customer success manager. But I do think there is value if you can pull off both as the central piece, because you end up with like multiple perspectives, and you would do things that nobody else could because you're the only one who has all those perspectives.
Correct. And then this idea of a strength, a certain trait, let's say a neutral trait, right? Most traits are neutral. Depending on scenarios, could be a good thing, could be a strength, and sometimes could be a weakness. In a sense where in the family, friends context, we'll give you one very obvious example, but it makes sense. For especially investors or LPs, limited partners who have a personal relationship with me, I do not require them to pay their annual fees on time. It's generally on the anniversary, send an update, but it does not. Sometimes it's 2 weeks, it's 3 weeks. Sometimes circumstances people take them. It's okay. I do. It's never been something I'm like, now the time, or am I ever like controlling with family and friends? That's actually makes, and we have mutual friends a lot who speak about this. That probably makes me more of a fun friend to hang out with, to be around, because I have no desire for power. essentially what I think I wrote a piece back in September when I was doing conferencing and traveling. I had some a lot of thoughts and wrote that and published on social media of the thinking behind money, power, fame. I've realized I have no desire for power. I don't care about controlling other people, what they do. So, and a lot of times, Winston Churchill wrote about this in history. Probably those are the type of people to be good in power anyway. But that's a different conversation for government, for other things, because they have no desire for power. So therefore, their intention is never to gain control. But at a company level, let's say, if I don't require billing to be consistent at a certain level, then I have a responsibility to my team to say, okay, what is my output of consistency of cost, of infrastructure, all these things, that is consistent. Then if the billing structure is free as you go, because they've been supportive investor for a long time, and then I always go do as you wish, then there's a misalignment. Or the creative schedule, or a lot of things, or I have no desire, power, or control over research output. I want people to work on things they're interested in, and then the way they see it. But if you don't have a standard formula, then they might be always leading other ways. And then on the customer front, I think what you are seeing probably is enlighten us. This is interesting. Where at Amazon had customers, obviously. It's just too big an organization where you are focusing on engineering, and there's so many layers, middle managers, everything, to be like, oh, that's the final output of Walmart bought this huge, or Coca-Cola bought this like 9-figure contract from us or something. But now you directly go, I'm an engineer now, and the next minute I gotta take this customer call, and then to be able to delight the customer that way. Do you think it's realistic for a person to do? The idea is for the person to do both, and to use our our sport analogy is that the best players are two-way players, right? You can play offense and play defense. Or do you think there is almost a strength you have to lean into to be able to optimize especially at startup stage, to be able to do that?
I mean, at startup stage, you have to do both. You just have to.
Okay.
And the fact that you can makes you move faster. But in a not too distant future, you almost need to lean into one of them, because like when you put a lot of pressure on one point, you get outstanding
Results.
Reward, right? By being focused. So you almost have to get to the point where once you're off the ground, you can have somebody being laser focused on this thing, and then you can be laser focused on another thing. Your focus might shift. There might be a phase where you start focusing on the product, but you have to be focused.
Yeah, and then is there we talk a lot about this before, is there a 2B and 2C business difference, in the sense where 2C supposedly you don't need generally speaking, you kind of, the product speaks for itself and people buy it, and then 2B you do have to consistently focus on your client relationships, your CRM, your go to market. Is that because
yeah
of, okay.
2B is more people heavy. You need to know where your customers are, where their pain points are evolving.
Yeah.
For 2C, you have more clear cut metrics, like daily active user, like what is an attribution metrics of what causes people to stay here. Cool. And then you can like kind of steer things from there from a metrics and analytics point of view. So to see,
is there a natural strength or a natural tendency for, or a reason, a rational, calculated reason behind your decisions always being in wanting to invent and work on 2B businesses?
I'm not too locked in.
Okay.
I think it's an inertia of just my past.
Okay.
So it's like very natural to go down this path.
Okay.
And there's also some skill sets alignment. If you want to build a 2C business, you really have to like get your user experience and metrics right. And my past experience working in the software industry has been very focused on kind of the infrastructure and business logic, and a lot less about the user experience. So as a startup, you have to lean on your strength to get started, and then work your way into a more structured business.
Yeah. And then what area the line sort of blurs? Is Cursor 2B? Is Cursor 2C? Is Claude sort of Anthropic? Obviously, you have a Claude purely 2C side, but the core business now obviously is tokens, is developers. Is there how would you define those as their emergent AI applications now? Would you say Cursor is a 2B company or 2C company?
I think Cursor is a 2C company. It's a direct to, like, consumer is obviously software developers right now and
Yeah.
potentially expand beyond developers.
So you consider Cursor 2C already?
But it's a 2C company. Yeah.
Okay. Because obviously we all agree that I think GPT and
GPT
and
and
perplexity are 2C.
Claude are 2C as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think Anthropic is also 2C?
Yeah. Anthropic is also 2C.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
But the traditional
Most of the chatbots are 2C.
Then we can go down the line of like obviously the traditional sort of HubSpot, Salesforce, all these companies you still consider them to be, right?
To be, yeah.
Okay. And there might be something blur the line of like obviously the large tech have that, the Microsoft sort of Teams you can call it to B2C / and Google obviously has both, but like something like even Zoom, right? It's kind of 2B and 2C in a way, right? Because there's obviously smaller subscription for the C side.
Yeah.
And there's
but it's primarily 2B. Cursor is also primarily 2B.
Okay. Okay. So you think Cursor is 2B?
But I think it has ambition to go beyond. Yeah. But it's primarily to business, to like developers, people who typically work as developers.
And the upside for 2C is obvious, is that you capture this direct customer relationship, this TAM, and people end up at the end of the day are a little bit more neglective towards margin, if you will, because they just like something like, Louis Vuitton or something, like they just want to pay for the product and be happy with it, or Apple or Starbucks, whatever it is, right? Nike, the brand value, these things. What do you think the advantage of for founders to go to 2B verticals are?
2B verticals is very slow to get started, but very sticky. To see there's a lot of trends that are changing, and
Michael Bloomberg actually
technology changes,
giant of 2B,
but 2B business is very, very sticky. So
like PIMCO, who's 5 minutes Pacific Insurance, the bond king of the West Coast. That, like, for example, if they bought Bloomberg terminals, they would probably use it for the last 50 years or something, right? And I believe I can get the numbers slightly wrong, but I believe it's somewhere around, the valuation of the company is about 140 billion now for Bloomberg, right? So right, as a very sticky 2B business.
Yeah.
So and I think they do about, I need to double check the numbers. There's a private company. I believe they do north of 70 billion in revenue, something like that. So So okay, interesting. Then two things before on this professional side of things. I think there's also this sort of thought of the public markets versus private markets thinking that we touched on before. The consensus, non-consensus, the getting it right, not getting it right. But as a founder and operator, and also, by the way, disclaimer that myself personally, not Pure Value Capital, but I am an investor in Bumblebee and also on the board of advisors. So this is not a advertisement to solicit securities, buy and sell securities of Bumblebee, even though I highly recommend Hexi as a person to listen to and read his thoughts on Substack. And then at some point, who knows, one of your MSP providers might be using his software, which is something we support. So as an operator, how do you look at the changing landscape of, and if you will, I can kick off with something spicy, like, AI eats software. In 2009, Andreessen wrote this software eats the world thing. More likely or not, I'm looking, at least, finance is a lot of bits information, and we talk about the world, atom world of bits. I'm more and more buying into this eating at least some of the software thing. If you just, anybody pull up the charts of, if you go to a public company, obviously more available information. Adobe's like, the chart look like this, Salesforce, all these. But even, let's say we have deals with AlphaSense, we can talk to FactSet and ThirdBridge, these generally around $25,000 a year, so $2,000 a month plus SaaS services for financial companies to help us with our work. So they don't directly drive outcome. They're research tools. Before 2022, let's say, they're highly usable, obviously, and they're built and they're designed a certain way, and then it's industry standard. But now, because this AI can solve a lot of problems sort of on demand, on the go with prompts, and then there's a lot of AI startups who can charge you maybe $400 versus a $25,000 subscription, $400 a year I'm talking about, to get similar information in some ways. Then I can see if somebody were to start a hedge fund tomorrow, investment company tomorrow, they might not immediately go to the big budget players. and they get 90% of that stuff done without going to the big budget players. Bloomberg as well. So how does this piece, how do you think about this? But obviously any opinion that's too extreme tend to leave some room for imagination, but indulge me if you will.
I'm going to throw something spicy here.
Go ahead.
Familiar with data labeling business?
Yep.
So you know how
you talking about scale AI type of data?
Scale AI, like this, like people overseas clicking buttons, like dog, cat, etc.
Yep.
Everybody is going to be a labeling business in the future. Every human is going to be a data labeler.
This is cool. Okay. Every human is going to be a label.
And the primary job of human beings will become labeling.
Okay, because go ahead.
So let's take a step back. Now that we've thrown the conclusion out.
Yeah. You gotta clip this part specifically. Yeah. Say it to the camera. Everybody
is going to be a data labeler.
Okay.
So
interesting. Okay.
If you take a step back, when ChatGPT just came out, it was natural language model, right?
Yep.
AI has been around for like 60 years, 70 years.
Yep.
So the large language model, like let's refer to AI as large language model innovation that happened in 2022.
Yep.
It is primarily a user experience innovation, right? Humans are naturally like inclined to speak and process language over a visual screen of clicks. The only reason screens are used as human-computer interface is because it was the most efficient tool yet, right? We saw the touch screen being an efficient way to capture human-computer interaction. So when the language model came around, it started to eat the user experience of things that are easier to be done using natural language. So you start getting into these basic chat functionalities, and then maybe they'll summarize your meetings and take notes, right? It is just a different way of representing information, but in a text format that is a lot easier for you to understand. And that's how like the 2023 ChatGPT era and a whole startup suite of GPT wrappers that came around is doing is primarily just to wrap the software interface with a more natural language. So it changed human behavior. As human behavior started changing, the AI started developing a new architecture called mixture of experts, which is what we call the AI agent, where an AI can also perform reasoning and take actions based on the reasoning. So that is a big leap in the technology because with the right actions to be taken, the AI can now not just summarize things, but also just execute certain things. But fundamentally, it is still a human-machine interface improvements.
Correct.
Right? So if you think about Cursor, Claude Code, they have this arrow or X to tell you like it is the right thing or it's not the right thing. And then and whenever somebody clicks that, they're labeling the data, okay? Whenever they click approve, the AI is doing the right thing versus no, AI did the wrong thing. It's a labeled data.
You're talking about click on the output, right? After the AI gave you an output, you click, be like, this is pretty good. I can use this code, or I can't. Okay, so you're helping their model, you know.
So now I'm introducing this concept of data labeling as into our day-to-day workflow. But AI is just now starting to kind of take actions and present things in an even easier way, right? As long as you, as the end user, can express what you want clearly, AI can typically do enough to execute that for you. Like book a hotel at some point will be supported directly through AI, right? Like as long as your intention is clear, the actual path of logging in, clicking through, browsing, all those will eventually go away because it's not necessary anymore. So that's the 2025, 2026 like time. Now, if we kind of extrapolate where this is going in 10 years, when you can imagine right now the agent not good enough, they might not be like accurate enough, they might not be scalable enough, maybe the infrastructure for these agents to take actions on software is not there, but they will be. At some point, they will come together, right? Gaps will be closed. New protocols. I have a question on this,
but yeah, keep going.
You know, Claude Skill, Model Context Protocol, MCP, all these things will eventually be built to support this, and you know, organizations will adopt. So then, what is left when all of that is in place? What is left is declaring your intention. What do I actually want?
Yep.
And then
Desire.
approving certain tasks, which is like, did that give what I want or not?
Mm.
And these are the two things that's really left. So you think about expressing intent, that requires creativity. I think it's going to be really hard to be replaced.
Human desire to be beautiful, to see beauty, be beautiful, to
and what do you feel like today? Do you want to see beautiful things, or do you want to see beautiful people? Right? Like that intention is something that human needs to do. And then once you express your intention, I want to buy something. The only thing is now, did this AI get me what I wanted? And then you approve or you disapprove, and you clear path. That approval become the labeling. And all we're going to be doing is labeling. I'm already only labeling when I'm building software now. When I'm writing code, I'm just labeling Claude code output, cursor output. And I can see that kind of moving to all the other industries, other job professions. Did this balance sheet look right? Did the balance sheet look wrong? Why does it look right? Why does it look wrong? If it looks right, good. And then boom, that's it.
Great to reduce fraud, for in the balance sheet case. And then this made me thought about this. This is phenomenal. So I think we should expand a little bit here and on this chapter of the. I had this view of, and this is probably original because I wrote it somewhere down. I don't think I read it somewhere, but just this view of like, if you look at the history of human economics, macroeconomics, microeconomics of like a couple thousand years, or if you take the most prominent example of like the United Kingdom's last 500 years, United States last 300 years, as the sort of the more prosperous economy. It's the GDP growth is being about fulfilling people's wants and needs. Freud has this overly simplified saying of everything about sex, everything about in life is about sex except sex, kind of thing. It's talking about one aspect of it, but sure, it's this idea of that human beings have infinite desires and wants, although those things are generally a few categories, right? The storytelling aspect, if the Chicago Bears came back last night, would be an amazing story to tell. Or another aspect of sometimes, and again, this is more on the, by the way, the sort of always, as always, I should have said this earlier, the part one of any episode is about the climbing the first mountain. That's what we talk about professional first, right? Sort of everybody sort of needs to deal with that in the modern competitive world. And the second part is the climbing the second mountain, your internal peace, right? And then we'll dive into that with friendship, life, and those things on the second part. But that led me to, there was a second mountain kind of thought when I was watching that game. I mean, look at how cold that was. And I was sitting in, Southern California, palm trees and 75-degree weather. I was like, and I played pickleball yesterday and stuff. I was like, this is, at that level, that's pure competition. That sport is not as enjoyable as the sport I just played. Anyhow, through that, people had the desire to watch amazing stories, endings turning.
A lot of people fill the stadium.
So
cold
at 20 degrees in Chicago, and then as soon as Caleb Williams hit that pass, the Hail Mary pass, the stadium was going off, right? So human beings have a desire to connect, right? Being together, storytelling, beauty. We touched on. So these things at the core, what the GDP growth essentially, we create a with capitalism and other ways
economic system
that's to fulfill those needs. And that's GDP, essentially.
They incentivize these needs.
Exactly, the products and services, right? So, and the innovation are through medium of distribution, innovation, all the others, like Amazon. Like, people didn't wake up and say, I wanted e-commerce. No, I wanted like a toy to deliver for my kid, or I wanted a laptop that's to be shipped. Like, they wanted different things. It just e-commerce happened to be that's delivered to them, correct? So, or nobody said like, I wanted an iPhone. Right. It was like, so let's say the original version, you can communicate on there. You can go to play. There was a map function at the original announcement, 2007, October 10th, the Steve Jobs press conference, fully available. Anybody can find it on YouTube in a way that they had like, I believe 4 functions, Safari, Maps, I think had a Google search, and there's music, right? So, and then later on, we know what the App Store became. It became this huge powerhouse of you can do anything on there, right? You're banking, everything, coding, a lot of things on there. But just the original 4, you can go to play. You want to go to play, you want to meet people. What do you need maps for? Most people are probably not going to, some people do, but not wandering around for the day. Just go, let me see another side of the neighborhood. They're going to meet people. Music, right? We had this appreciating art and type of things. It's the flow of life, music. Then they had a messaging function, communicating with other human beings. So all these needs that are there are going to be amplified, so the desire don't change. So if you were to start a business, which I think you touched on beautifully, that your goal is to obviously meet these needs, right? How AI is going to change is that probably the delivery speed method, how it's done, which led to one of the technical questions I had in between is that this is just a medium term thing. I might take a slightly different view on this especially for people who's being in the industry doing it right now. Of this, you were talking about the 2025, 26 version, specifically the AI agent and the reasoning function and getting things done, the booking. Let's just use that booking, for example. I would say currently what the current LLM, let's call it as it is, the large language models, the current models, what it looks like, are not particularly good at accurate tasks. So two very precise questions. One, how you said it's going to get better. So enlighten us, educate us how. Two is that it seems to me they are very good at this expansion of thoughts. So if you wanted to write an email in all kind of ways, if you wanted to and I still write my own emails because I like my way of it sounds more like Robert, but or have it expanding, writing a poem or documents or stuff like that. They are very sort of expensive, creative, and generate a lot of content in a way, kind of just like a lot of human talking, if you will. But to execute a precise action, so far it seems to be even the best tools, the results are a little bit underwhelming. Like you wouldn't trust it to book a 3-leg European trip for you with 3 different accommodations and flights and connections and getting all right to the right corporate credit card, whatever you need to use to get that transaction done. That part we've been talking about it since when we were both in the Bay Area last year, January 25. So far, I haven't seen any product that's really good out there, or from incumbents, Booking.com or Airbnb, these type of things. What's that medium term? There's this precise thing that I don't think we got there yet.
I mean, getting accurate tasks done is happening. Specifically, booking trips is not happening because different parties be involved. They have incentive to keep people around the
Existing
discovery
UI
page, right? Because sometimes that storefront is how they make money.
Yeah.
So they can't just disrupt. So it's a part of the capital system
Yep.
that is causing certain delays in certain areas.
Yep.
But if you look at like coding being an important, somewhat enjoyable, and essential task to be done, and needs to be done at an accurate level, it's already happening, and it's already happening at massive scale, right? Like most of the software today is written by AI. Not that it's great, but then there's keep coming up with new ways to improve it. So, and you started to see like Claude coming up with Anthropic coming up with co-work, Anthropic for legal. Like you started seeing them doing these more like precise type of work. So the expansive side is still there, and it still will be there. But the like agentic task accuracy is also developing, and it's something that will just continue to.
Yeah, and the best example
progress.
is that you would say if somebody questioned the accuracy proof of the current LLM ability, you would point you to coding, right? Yeah. Coding will be the number of application you go, they are accurate in doing that.
Yeah, because if you think about coding, you're building like massive software, which is similar to like building construction, like a building.
Yeah.
Like it requires precision and accuracy, right? So you start developing systems that you can test if a single component is working, and then you start testing that if an overall system is working under potentially shaky, smaller components that make up of it. And over time, enough infrastructure will be in place that this would just be automated. Like this morning, I was sitting downstairs drinking the coffee, and I was coding on my phone. Like I wasn't using my laptop anymore.
Yeah.
A customer sent an email, and I thought, okay, maybe I can fulfill that request right now. Just through a few prompts, and I did it in 20 minutes, released it. Before we start recording, I had to send an email out back to the customer saying, hey, it's ready to go.
Would you say, and Hexi's got a brand new iPhone 17 Orange, by the way, so the compute power is slightly better than that, but yeah, nevertheless, it's quite, I mean, I don't even think Steve Jobs could imagine this, right, to do that.
And it's happening on the server, hosted in AWS.
Yeah, that's right. So my question actually is, what could simple storage or DynamoDB, these impressive, at least at the time, software architecture, to be built with 2-3 people using Cursor, using Cloud Code now, as accurate as that sophisticated as that building. If we think about that as a sophisticated building, Could they build the Empire State? Or there's still more. You still need that 2,000 AWS engineering
You still
team.
need that. You still need that. Like when
So
you're building
then it's not
something
that accurate. Then is it scale? Is it
well, it
accuracy?
depends on what you're talking about. Like if
Okay.
you're building, for example, if we use analogy of a building,
Yeah.
if you're building like the central pillar, that requires like very precise engineering, right? The shape, the mass. But then like when you're building something like this, like a shelf, you don't need that same level of precision. So AI is already eating these slightly lower precision requirement use cases.
Yeah.
But the really, really central infrastructure of like networking, database, persistence, those will take a little bit longer. But AI is already starting doing some maintenance work on those stuff. But it's hard for AI to be as creative and come up with like a new architecture. Like these are still human jobs. And they will remain human jobs.
Which leads back to the labor market conversation of likely the centerpiece probably requires principal engineers, advanced, experienced senior engineers like yourself. Proper resource capital allocation requires sophisticated portfolio managers, but junior level jobs or junior level functions are likely eliminated.
I think they'll just change form.
Okay.
It used to be kind of like maintaining code and writing code by hand.
Yeah.
It would just change to be maintaining AI and talking to AI. And occasionally, if AI like malfunctions, understand why it's malfunctioning and fix it.
Doesn't talking to AI efficiently, and like I'm talking about advanced level of talking to AI, requires knowing what to ask, knowing the proper prompt. Proper prompt comes from experience and know-how. That comes from years of doing the junior level work to lead to senior level work, which is by default a senior role's job to use AI well, right?
I mean, the whole labor market is going to upskill.
Yeah.
So the senior
I'm
level
not
is
worried
going
about
to be new.
Even if let's say 80% of the white collar job goes out of work, that's the reality. I'm the least person to go go against reality and objectivity, and that's going to lead to a social riot and whatever that is. I'd rather to deal with the truth and call that out than like let's say the more bullish narrative in the Silicon Valley saying, oh, this is all going to be good, it's going to be job explosion. Because and obviously this is a personal view. My view is that that's going to happen in the long term, no doubt about it. But the medium term, there's an air pocket where there will be gazillions of a large number of fresh graduates who are out of jobs, not us. I know that. So which actually makes this more objective to call it out. My worry is for other people. I know, knock on wood, we will be fine. But that layer will be out from this, let's just call it 2027 to 2030. Let's call that, if that's a big recession or something, then that leads to social issues, political, all that aside. That piece, well, like then people eventually move. And then people are, if one thing we know about our species is we're highly adaptable, right? Then they might go to trade school, they might go do mechanical engineering, they might work on their, because that part is replaced a lot slower.
Yeah, some will.
They might not go become accountants. They might not be as many paralegals at law firms. Like that changes. But let's say the class of 2030 will adapt extremely well because they've seen already what happened. They're not going to take that junior analyst role, that junior software engineering role. They might do something else. But this class of, let's say, 2024 to 2029 will be frustrated. And then eventually they learn, like all of our ancestors have done, is that throughout history, Charles Darwin said, not the smartest nor the strongest that survive. It's the most adaptable, right? So I'm not saying anything long-term, our species would blah, 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 whatever, those doomsday scenario. I'm just talking about medium-term, I wouldn't underwrite it any other way unless
I actually think medium-term, the people who are employed is in more danger than the
fresh
graduates.
Because graduates use the tools and approach things.
So I think fresh grad, we'll have to take even one step back and talk about capital markets in general, right?
Great.
Okay. Incentivize demand.
Yep.
And it pays for the demand. So your labor salary is priced based on overall demand and overall supply. Software engineering, the old school software engineering without AI takes a long time to train, requires certain kind of mindset, right?
Yep.
So it's really hard to find in this world. But the demand for software is so high because everything is transitioning digitally that during like the 2010s, the salary of software engineers really bloated, like went up so much because of this outsized demand versus like this undersupply of talent.
Yep.
And because of that, a lot of people flow into it and try to study it for it, right? So there's that adjustments. Now with AI, what happens is the demand has not changed, but the supply drastically increased. So large organizations that are not adapting don't quite figured out a way to
brilliant.
to handle that, like increase of supply. So the first thing they do is we stop hiring. The next thing they do is like we start laying off, which is what we're seeing right now. And then at some point they realize, wow, we could actually build 3 times faster. Why don't we actually bring on like 2 times more projects in next year's planning process instead of saying we're gonna like dish out like these 60 projects, let's bring them on. So then it's gonna like the demand is taking time to adjust. But you see, large organizations plan an annual cadence, so it takes a few years for them to really be comfortable and say, hey, we're gonna commit to like twice as many projects and still believe our internal team can get it done with the same amount of people.
Yep.
So when they start adjusting for that, they're gonna start like hiring or like at least stop laying off, right? So then the demand is going to meet the supply like proper because of AI supercharged developer productivity. At that point, whoever used AI best will be the most coveted talent. And those who don't want to adapt, typically those that are in large organization who is reluctant to change and who feel comfortable, are typically the ones that are least hungry to change, will eventually be impacted and be impacted more severely than others of the new grad. And the new grad will have a harder time right now because the large organizations are still adapting. The whole funnel has shifted. But they'll be doing better over a longer period of time because they've learned the skills. They adapt. They might not have jobs for a short period of time, but at some point they're going to be in a better position to transition to an AI native developer and be employed again.
Yeah, and then that.
So then ultimately it comes down to the most willing to change are those that will survive the best over a long period of time.
Amen to that. That particular and in our case with the to start from scratch and then to be able to do it well require this first principle based effort and sort of refine the craft. You were talking about that large organizations, 40-year-old middle manager or something like that, who's used to the cushion of all the benefits of all the benefits of being in that era of the undersupply of the talent, and then they happen to be in that seat of over time the quality sort of dwells down in the sense where if it's 2017 you hear about somebody else who graduated at 22 makes $300,000 a year, whatever the case may be, then 2019 this person goes to do that. Their natural strength is not even engineering and they just think they can get a job, and you're talking about that phenomenon. And we're both well aware of that, and then and that's probably a good thing for society of the resource allocation. And the last thing I want to call on this one particularly, you're absolutely spot on, I think, of this chapter of, because we're both sort of sitting cross-section of the top 2 modern, and this is from parenting too. They want their kids to do what? Tech or finance. Because it's sexy, it seems like you make a lot of money. You either wear a super cool t-shirt to go to the office and be doing having unlimited PTOs, whatever it is you want to work at Google and having a high salary, or you put on a nice suit, you work in private equity and your life is blah, 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 or investment banking. This idea, and then this oversaturation of, and Elon was right on this in like about 2018, 19, or saying, not enough people was interested in doing manufacturing. And then and I think I said this privately numerous times over the years, there's about 5,000 portfolio managers needed, 5,000 total I'm talking about. In the US, let's limit it to the United States. That's probably needed in the entire country. It's an important job, but you don't need a lot of people to do that. For all the people who want to go into finance and make a lot of money, like I know now as I get older and more direct, if you will, it was good luck, because there's very few people, their natural talent is supposed to do that. And then because of this transition that you were talking about, the middle of that role likely to get way more efficient. So, and again, I have no association with these organizations, so it's fair to just use them in names, not any particular ones, right? If you talk about Franklin Templeton, Fidelity, right? These they have lots of people to support each other to do great work. The client-facing side might be more needed, the people side, but in general, I think just to go in there and to say you sit it behind your desk and crunch some numbers and come out with Excel spreadsheet, that is not good enough. Just like you're talking about your sort of that oversupply of software engineering talent, and now really what they using the Valley, the 10x engineer, right? Is that right term? Like the 10x, really that comes out, and then the Andrew Kropotkin of the world will become more important in a way. So I think it's people. Oh, this is, and we'll end this particular segment on this one. People talk about Michael Jordan was stuck in this era. Absolutely not. Just like people saying, imagine Warren Buffett had AI in 1958. He would probably even be more Warren than, right? It's the tools, is how you judge. So, or Jeff was leading up, probably would take him way less years to build Amazon to a scale. And probably he only hired like 100 people.
Yeah.
To lead it. So I think there's the more agency I think people can have of their abilities, of understand their strengths and weaknesses, and to apply that with the technology tool as a supercharger, the better. And and that, I think that's the reality of the job market and the current economic environment they're going into. And I think people who are sort of too much doing sugarcoating on either way, on either side, it's doing a disservice to people, young people or people who need to transition. Arguably, you're right, the transition cost for middle manager, middle-aged people, it's gonna cost a lot higher. When you're 40 years old and your kids are like 10, you have 2 mortgages, and you have, because why do you have 2, by the way? Because they have a vacation home, because they're used to a cushy lifestyle. So you have a mortgage on your home that you're going to like 13 days a year or something. Let's say that's the case. Then you have all these transitions. It's very, very difficult. And I think most people probably, if will be better off, let's say, adopt this simple mindset of learning is fun, right? If people think learning is fun, then at 43 it should be more fun to learn at 31. Because at 43, or even now, I feel like, let's say, I'm probably slightly further away from like the raw part of work than I was at 24. So, but I know if I lose that on a consistent basis, I have no value. If I don't do the raw, like basically, if you can't be a good player on both sides of the court to contribute anymore, it's time to hang it up. It's business is a lot like sports. It was what you have done for me recently, kind of business.
So to cap it off, I have another great powerful idea.
Perfect.
One constant that is fair to everyone, regardless of middle-aged manager or young graduate, is you have 24 hours a day. Time you have is constant and fair to everyone. And how long does it take you to change become the deciding factor of who thrives in the next generation? So for those who are eager to learn, like your ability to learn is the new bottleneck. Beforehand, before AI, where information is relatively scattered, a lot of time spent on gathering information, consolidating information, finding those information. But with AI being able to sift through information and collect the right one that you need, being so efficient, the bottleneck has shifted to how fast you are at absorbing certain information and how deep you can integrate that information to your day-to-day operations. So learning is the new bottleneck. And whoever learns fastest will continue to thrive and probably thrive more.
Correct. Yeah.
In this new era of technology.
Applying those learnings and to pivot, to iterate along the way. Of the 1950s, Warren was going through yellow pages. In the 1990s, probably people going to libraries and the beginning of internet. Our era was we're going through temple links, right? We're the millennial temple link era. For us, search was digital, but you click through a bunch of BS and you read one blog that clicked. Now you get all those information quickly, but how are you really doing? Or the same thing, even on the...
Or how do you ask the right question so it gives you the information that you actually want is also a skill, a new skill. Just like how do you click through the right pages of our time.
Yeah. And then we'll close on this chapter. Easy segue into the next one is, and we'll leave that as a cliffhanger, is my mother's recently into Andrew Huberman and Brian Johnson. So, but how can you apply that into health? Like the information even 5 years ago wasn't as available, right? How do you regulate your high blood pressure? How do you do? I mean, she doesn't have any of those, but as approaching 60, she's looking into health optimization. I was like, that's impressive. You're watching all the podcasts and stuff like that I watched 2-3 years ago to apply that to her morning sunlight, whatever, all this stuff that she's doing. It was quite amusing and impressive at the same time. But health information has never been more available. Financial literacy information, the ability to be a software engineer, to learn the latest, greatest in tech, to learn how to use the AI tools, all that's available. can you continue to really absorb, iterate, pivot, apply, relearn again? That probably is the differentiator. And yeah, and then that's why some wisdom doesn't change. The Munger talk about lifelong learning. Even in his era, he's saying, right,
spot on.
he's
Spot on.
Yeah, not a single smart person that he's met doesn't read all the time, because lifelong learning is the only way to get there.
Yeah.
It's just the tools change, but the wisdom doesn't change, right? You still have to learn.
Yeah.
Great. Well, it's been a treat with you to learn from you, my friend. We witnessed each other's growth, and then maybe early on you said a few times you learned something from me. I'm grateful of you acknowledging that, but I think over the years I've learned from you quite a bit through action, through your words, through your thinking, through the way you treat people, which will click that into how we climb the second mountain of the inner peace in life. So thank you for the first part. I appreciate it.
Sweet.
And good luck to Bumblebee, and I know you'll be very successful.
Appreciation is mutual. Thanks for having me on this chapter.
So the second piece, everyone's got, I kind of said it during break, everyone has two mountains to climb kind of thing. You want to be successful and happy. We can think of plenty of people who are successful or unhappy, or who are unhappy, who are happy but might not be as successful, which to each their own, each can work. But the goal is to climb both mountains, right? And then I have something I want to share with you that is interesting to the least. This is directly, Hexi has no knowledge of this, and I received that this morning, and we'll keep it as is for now to have Hexi's authentic reaction. As I show Hexi a piece of text from my phone, he knows who that is. And then let's just watch this real quick. You know who that's from, right? You know what that says? We'll catch the reaction live on camera.
Congratulations.
Perfect.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right? That is pretty cool, right?
Congratulations.
So for the so we'll put the video link in there for describe what you just saw and how I'll tell you how I feel, of course. But
I think I'm really happy to see, like, this is probably like one of the scarier things in life.
Oh, it is.
Compared to like, it's, we've always been very self-centered, and as a only child, both of us, like, everything was given to us, and kind of almost had like all the things we can imagine. And to be able to kind of start giving that same energy to somebody else, and just even like that thought of sharing everything you have to somebody else is a scary thought. And also be fully responsible for how things turn out. So it's a big leap of faith, and I'm very happy for you.
I appreciate it, and it is. Thank you. And it's been some time and coming, and then so we just showed it was basically we're expecting a member of the family, hopefully smoothly. I think I thought about this a lot. The first time I thought about how sort of, obviously you have to have the right partner first in life to build a family with. And then you kind of go through this phase of, then are you ready? That's the type of thing I thought about in 2022. So I was 27 at the time. And you check a few things off the list. So we talk about every man or woman every person has two mountains to climb, the first and second one. You check off, can you afford it? You check off, do you have the right time, energy, space, and things like that. But then the most importantly, just like life, there's a lot of things that's identity based. What type of person you can be, what type of a man that you are. I think I had to check, I asked myself that this morning, right? So the process was a little bit, let's say at the time, a distraction, if you will, to prepare for the podcast, because my mind the night before, last night was I knew she had an appointment with her OB this morning to check. But was solely focused on. I had a lot of questions and spicy takes, and to rejuvenate the conversation with you as a guest, if you will, like about AI eating software, about all these kind of things, and then with that, like I thought about how what kind of father you want to be. There's a big piece that, one, obviously you want to be who you truly are. So if I'm passionate about the work I do, then I should continue to do that. This is no stoppage from, let's say, taking career milestones off, taking responsibility off. It's probably more so to double down. But also at the same time, it's about, is everything in life going to be about yourself? Or is it going to be about the type of, I wouldn't even confuse fatherhood with leadership. It's like, it's very different. It's like, are you going to be completely and totally responsible and then to put yourself second or third? So obviously through pregnancy and at least the early phase of, from a biological standpoint, the women go through more. So nausea, like feeling not very fatigued and things like that. I've witnessed my wife going through that already for the last couple of weeks, while I'm doubling down at work and building teams and working on projects that it's interesting to me. So that process is, I probably have to put you have to, like you said, you probably have, I realize I probably have to put myself the third. I gotta be a great husband first, to be supportive to her. I could be a great dad to be ready for that role. Then whatever comes I need to do probably is the third. So it's this becoming a full version of a man. That also, human beings as a species, we've done gazillion years of passing down to the next generation, and then of how that's how our civilization stood the test of time. So there's responsibility there too. So this combination of, you want to still be authentically who you are, because eventually, kids are, as we are, adult children now to our parents. We know who people really are, because eventually objectivity comes through, and you see your parents as who they are, their strengths, weaknesses, their flaws, the things that they did right, the things they might not optimize on, which you understand through, because nobody's perfect and from different era, things like that. But then we still want to try to be the best we can be. So adding on to professional responsibilities of obviously handling other people's investments, handling clients' fiduciary responsibilities. But this feels something that I need to take two steps back. How can I be supportive to my partner throughout the process? So I could put myself second. And then how, when the kid is here, knock on wood, how can I be the best dad I can be? So weights differently. And it is the first stage. So we have a live shot of your reaction of my preparation of father to be. So that leads to our conversation on the second mountain. So kick us off with a few questions, if you will.
I just want to give you a hug.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Congrats.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, I'm so happy for you.
You knew this was coming, but you didn't know it's gonna be this day.
Never.
Yeah, I appreciate.
Until it's here, and you never feel the full power until it hits you.
That's right.
Same with quitting a job. Same with getting married. Same with, it's like until the day is here, you really feel the full power, and then you tell people this is like the best decision in my life.
And that tells you, tells you about Hexi as a person, as a friend, that he is, I think the most important thing I would talk about friendship, it's being emotionally available. Like it's being there. We know each other for 10 years. The friendship probably took off that 2018 Lakers season 7 years ago. But I mean, when I basically just told you on camera that we're expecting a baby, that you're the first one crying, not me. That shows the type of person that you are. So I definitely did not, between the production sets, did not plan on the hug version, but there you are. So that's the type of person you are, and I appreciate you. And hopefully we're, as we planned, the friends for the rest of our life, right? So, and then hopefully, godfather to our children's and to each our child's, and also being there for them, and a lot of times uncle might give better educations than dads. So I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, it feels different when I've seen babies often, but
Yeah, me too.
but seeing your best friend's baby is just different. So I kind of relate to like when Michael was just previous guest, when he sees his nephew, he feels different.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a profound moment.
Thank you. And I mean that just, I can't even make this. That just gave me actually, you know what you just did actually eased my mind a little bit. I know, like, God forbid if something happens to me, down the road, there's somebody else that outside of the immediate family that cares about this particular person. Boy or girl, we don't know yet. I think gender review is in like 2-3 weeks. I'll definitely invitations on the way. We'll do something fun there. But I can see, and hopefully everybody can see from the 70% communication that's nonverbal, that you care about my future kid as well. That is essentially what brotherhood, what friendship is for. I'm very glad we built that. So we can go the nostalgic way to go to the way beginning. You want to tell us a little bit of the story, which I did with Michael as well with the 2020 Hawaii, but ours go way back. So pick whichever you want. 2016 when you 15 when we first met, or 2018 when we decided to get the least expensive, the cheapest Lakers season tickets ever. On doing their worst season ever to bond as friends, and whatever story you want to tell. And then hopefully people can see there's more to life than obviously the first part will cover so much professionally. There's more to life than obviously work building companies. There's a lot more to fulfillment, if you will.
I think we met at racetrack probably as the first time at Button Willow.
Yeah.
Kind of middle central part of California.
Yep.
And kind of seeing each other a few times. And college is chaotic. There's a lot of people come and go.
Yep. Especially for a popular kid like Hexi. Yeah. Sorority females are around him most of the time.
Let's say I'll have to tell the Porsche story.
Okay.
I think it's the good one.
Yeah.
So it was probably the second time that we went to the racetrack, and we all like drove on the track, and it was towards the end of the day, and then Robert wants to try out my car at the end of the day. It was a stick shift, so it was cool. And he hadn't driven that much, so
I didn't know how to drive manual back then. No.
Yeah, well, I didn't know you didn't know.
Yeah, I knew a little bit, but I was not.
So I was like, of course, you can drive my car. Mm-hmm. And then he got on the car, and he's wanting to back out of the parking spots. And then next thing we know, boom, he backed right onto the curb and scratched the side of the wheel that I have just freshly painted.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, this kid. So afterwards, he apologized and checked it, and we continued on that day. But after the track day, he said, Hexi, let me make this up for you. Let me like fix this tire paint. So I was like, all right, fine. Sounds good. You took the action. You're responsible. And then he said, I'm going to get the entire 4 wheels replaced so it looks kind of consistent as if you just got it new. At that moment, I was like, it is a little bit unnecessary. The fact he offered it means he takes responsibility for his actions. He messed things up here and there not often, but he always takes responsibility for it. And I think that is a character I look for people that I want to be friends with over a long period of time. So that was a deciding moment that I thought, okay, this person, I want to be friends with him for a while from here. So I didn't end up like having him do the fix. I insisted not to. I don't want him to do things I wouldn't do myself.
Mm.
But yeah, that was kind of a moment, and then things kind of took on from there.
That's right. And then we did share a lot of experience throughout. Then, if you will, I think friendship is something that you choose to have people you have in common with. It can be interest based, can be experience based, can be shared memory, can be shared experience, things like that. That you have to be intent. I think adult friendship. So I was going to dive this concept. This is a perfect thoughts on a segue to. It didn't even have in my notes. I just thought about this on the plane a few times during my sort of spontaneous thinking sessions, and it's essential. Adult friendships has to come with intentionality. Because post college, generally you are not going to an environment surrounded by gazillions crowds of your peers. You're not going to have a spontaneous dining hall conversation, a walk down to take the same class and share the same. And the most important is this: because you're objectively, what you're doing in life just tend to slightly deferred the more years go on as you graduate. So what people probably need to do is this understanding of that you're going to be a little bit different. Let's say when you're in college, right? You all take you take similar classes to deal with similar problems, issues, or things you're happy about. Then you can vent, complain, enjoy, celebrate the similar things because your roles in life are similar. Postgraduate, one could be an investment banker, one could be a software engineer, another person could start his own company. This person can be in tech, but doing very different things than another person in tech. That person could be taking a solo travel to Argentina for a year and come back, take a gap year, not having a professional responsibility. Another person could have gone work for 2 years, but then being in grad school for like 5 years or something, and then being a campus life versus a professional adult life. A person could live in more of a suburban California versus somebody who lives in downtown Manhattan. The experience is very different. Naturally, you're just not going to say like your day-to-day have the same experience as your friends. But the intentionality of one, obviously the friends you made from the past, but also to keep an open mind of throughout. All those are, again, information, knowledge, and to the wisdom thing. All those are in a way the more superficial side of the noise factor, if you will. Truly, you still want to associate yourself with people you can learn something from, but more importantly, the values are aligned from. And then you have a few interests that might align that you can share, you can do that with, which we do that through a lot of different sports over time, right? You talk about motorsport was one. You were super good at all kind of water board sports, right? Wake surfing, stuff like that. I've joined you a few times in Seattle doing those. You then obviously basketball has been something we always played, watched, enthusiastic about. We talk about other sports, and we play racket sport, played pickleball a lot last year when we both live in the Bay Area. Hexi would drive like an hour through traffic to come to see me in South Bay, Santa Clara to play, right? Vice versa. Like where I would go to Redwood City to play basketball game with the boys, things like that. I think it takes a certain level of intentionality and dedication to say, okay, this is something that I'm committed to maintain this friendship. It doesn't have to be a lot. It has to be 3, 4 people. Thank you for calling the best friend. And that means a lot. And those type of intentionality gives you a community in a way. And I think that's the core part of this social need that human beings want and have, if you will. And in return, you probably have something close to unconditional love in a way that your parents give that. And you truly want to see each other being successful, right? You want it's always wanting, oh, this is something that a piece of information that I got or a resource I might have, be like, oh wow, if he can, that would be great. It's never this thing about, okay, I'm going to acquire these things, and the other person. It's always about share the community mindset, right? And that's the supportive thing. And obviously, we both witnessed how adult friendship, some come from college or way backward years, can be fragile, right? Can be very fragile indeed. And through those scenarios, I just go back to, you have to look at in life the two mountains, what is truly important, right? If it might seem fragile in reality and on paper, but if sort of the involved parties are generally looking at what's really at stake and what's truly precious, then a lot of things actually become not very important, if you
Mhm.
will. So I think, adult friendship takes a lot of intentionality, authenticity, and the commitment to maintain that, if you
Yeah.
will. So
Yeah, it's no longer kind of like everybody's just in class. You just run into everybody naturally. So, and in California, everything's far away, right? So,
it's a bit of a
it's
like,
not
even
like
living in
in
the
New
same
York
city.
City. It's
Yeah.
like you have to really make a commitment. So
Mhm.
the effort has to be neutral. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think one psychology point, if I were to expand on just this, from a psychology perspective, let's call it as it is. Most people socialize, especially through more sort of acquaintance, like medium level connection basis. Most people socialize to compare, to do status signaling,
Mm.
to gain attention. But then again, comparison is a thief of joy.
Mhm.
So if you think about that, so they go through a social event through signaling, comparison, who's cooler, who's wealthier, for men, whose girlfriends hotter, all these nonsense. Joe Rogan, which I shout out to Joe, I talk about a lot on the podcast production, but also just on. He's like, that's like everybody's still living in high school or middle school. Are you kidding me? He's talking about 50-year-olds who's doing that. Of course, people. I'm like, are you kidding me? Right? I think, but doing that, one, first of all, they should grow up. But the most important thing is, by doing that, they actually take the joy out of having strong social connections. So the goal is we have this need to connect, right? Or I describe this very simply. I think we talk about this during my 29th birthday at the time. I think you were just freshly retired from Amazon and starting your own entrepreneur journey. In May of 2023, I think I was like, my ideal way to structure the day is in the first 6 hours I do something intellectual. The second 2-3 hours I do something physical, challenge myself cardio and weights wise. I enjoy doing sports, it's fun. Then after that, I feel like a productive day. I learn something that can apply to the markets. I enhance myself physically to maintain at least healthy. Then the next 5 hours a day, I want to do something social. I would love to hang out with, for every day, I would love to hang out with great friends starting right around 7 p.m. to 10:30, 11. Hopefully we'll cut it off right before midnight so we can get quality sleep. That's like a perfect damn day. Because of that, I think when you have the idea of that means for true connection, then the other virtual sitting with the other things the noises can be taken out, if you will. So there's no other way to sort of to describe it besides experiencing authenticity and friendship that way. So, and that wasn't even, I have my notes on parenting, but which we'll get to in a second. But because you are genuine friendship, that had to go there. So thank you. Yeah, and it takes both sides, of course. Yeah.
Nice.
So I appreciate it, and we built quite a friendship that way. With one of the medium, since we're on that, how do you think? This is for both genders, men, women, all that. Like, how do you think doing sports or activities together that sort of builds a human connection, if you will? We play on the same teams through various forms, mainly basketball, but numerous times, and play against each other in pickleball, of course. But how do you think those experiences, how do you remember, reshape them, and then brings you joy and happiness? For me, I know for sure it does. Playing sports with friends outside is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, as a basketball player, I enjoy watching my teammates succeed. Sometimes I don't need to be the one scoring if I can make an assist.
Yeah.
Just form a beautiful pass, that's even more enjoyable than scoring myself. So I like to play these collaborative sports where you get to almost think in the same way with a different person that outsmart an opposing team. Those are the best moments. So sports help create those opportunity, right? There are rules you follow, but then you can get creative about how you work around those rules to work with a team. So that to me is the most fun part about sports. It's actually a little less of the competition, but more of the collaboration of people working in sync, right? Everybody aligned towards one goal and work together to get it done. That is fun. That is just fun.
And we'll pull exact clip later on of Hexi's talking about a specific scenario where he was definitely the best player on the court. And he was getting double teamed towards a tight game, 21-21, I believe. And he got double teamed twice on that possession. and he passed me for the game-winning shot. I might took all the glory for hitting that shot, which I played horrible gaming. I think I was missing like I don't know, some kind of Klay Thompson end of career stats of like over 10 or something. But he passed me on a double team, still trusted me and hit that shot, even though I enjoy the consequence of hitting a game-winning shot and getting a ego lift from that. But all the credit, if you watch the clip, which we'll put on there, it's because Hexi read the situation correctly and passed it to the open person and trusted that person would execute. So that's to me, that simplifies one of your greatest strengths, I think. And true leaders, I've known this from obviously learning from my father and other important people I read about. Of the best leaders are willing to be led. So that piece is it's wonderful. Then we're linked to parenting a little bit. I just thought again, this unlike running companies or investing or software engineering, we can claim we have some experience and expertise on. This is something we are not even. So I'm just gonna use one concept I wrote down this is from another podcast learning that Gary Vee was on Hims and Hers podcast recently. He said parenting is this combination of optimism plus accountability. I really liked that concept. So if there's any example or anything you can think of to add would be great. It's just for me to kick us off on this. He's talking about like how optimism meaning or unconditional love, let's say, in a way that no matter your son daughter go plays let's say a varsity soccer game or something, no matter what happens, we'll love you when you come home, right? But accountability is that if you shot over 10, then you need to work on the jump shot. The accountability is that if you claim you want to play D1 and you want to do this, you want to do whatever it is, then in a way, a lot of parents say this in a moving way that God put me on earth not to be your friend, but to be your dad, to be your mom. So I have to tell you, these are what's required in order to get you where you want to go. Mm-hmm. So that's the accountability side, right? We don't at least try not to give them goals to say you have to go to Harvard or you have to play D1 sports. But if they themselves decided that's something they desire, then you have to say, well, these are requirements to get to that, right? To hold them accountable. So I thought that combination of this optimism or unconditional love with accountability makes it great. And honestly, Michael talked about this on the previous episode as well, of this accountability from friendship, that true friends who care about you deeply, they will call you bullshit. And he literally said, they will call you bullshit. They will not let you off the hook, which you have a beautiful story of that, Hexi doing that to me. I know he knows exactly what I'm talking about, which I enjoyed a lot, where he went full Draymond Green mode on me on the phone for like 3 minutes, which is great. So yeah, I wonder what's your take on that.
So it's a common pitfall for parents to want the best, literally the best for their children. And a lot of times when they see their children fall, they just want to help them up, right?
Solve the problems for them.
Protecting children is such a deep instinct in human being that everybody falls for this trap at least one time. But being a good parent is not about helping your children up. And a lot of times about having the gut to watch them get up themselves and just stand next to them, supporting their journey. That is hard. Usually the right things are the hard things to do. So a lot of times it's not about making sure they get into this school, because a lot of that is your desire. It's not really their desire. What is better for the children is if you give them the right challenge for them to develop the muscle so they can weather the wind of the world themselves. That pitfall is something we'll need to work to avoid actively.
And also providing them that safe harbor, saying, you can always come back. We love you. The love is the same. But you should go out to test the waters and storm
we'll watch
yourself.
You, right? If you fall, we'll make sure no car come around and hit you. Like that's parents' safe harbor, right? That's protection. But I will not help you up each time. When you cry, you do something reasonable. I will not give you candy each time. That is like not the right thing to do.
Yeah. Or my wife says this, she wants to practice the idea of, we talk about attention span in the first segment of kids have to learn to deal with boredom. If they're bored, are you going to hand them an iPad and just start playing?
No.
Like immediately, like if they're bored, they're going to cry, they're going to complain. or you're gonna be like, well, it's part of life to deal with boredom. You can just get on your phone when you're bored, or you're just gonna sit there, be still like a stoic and meditate, right? It sounds obviously much harder to do even for adults.
Yeah.
But learning how to deal with boredom is a part of it, right? Or you want to use it to connect, again, this obviously is biased as a personal taste thing. Like, when I travel airports and stuff, I talk to you a lot. If I am have a few minutes gap or bored, so-called, I would talk to another human being because I want to connect to people and learn something from them. So if you're bored, are you going to, but you can choose the introverted way to say, are you going to read something or get a piece of information instead of just seeking entertainment immediately, right? That is, all those come from parenting, if you will.
Yeah. The other common pitfall for parenting is projection. It is about projecting your own desire to your children and really like push them towards a direction that you yourself want to go. It's almost easier to push somebody else to go somewhere than to go there yourself. So if a person wanted to become X, never really put in effort to, they want their kids to become X, they push them really hard. These forces are typically transient. And when the force disappear, and at some point it will disappear, typically the children don't continue, can't find that sustained motivation to go to that direction. And the better way to achieve the outcome is to guide them to come up with that idea themselves. It's very similar to what you were mentioning earlier, that you want them to grow that desire to be great at X, at Y. Once they have the desire, they will be able to do things that you can't imagine they would do to get there. So it's another common pitfall that we have to be mindful of.
And this might be suited for, like, in a way, the non, like for me, I think I mentioned earlier of I don't have desire of controlling people what they want to do. And that particular trait might be good in this scenario, right? I assume, like, where your kids might surprise you in their ways that were friends or things like that. You watch them grow, prosper, witness their growth and things like that in unexpected ways. But if you have sort of this Bezos quote of being flexible on the details, being stubborn on the vision, right? In a sense where, like, I will absolutely be benign about being stubborn about the principles of the family. There won't be a lot, but there will be a few. How do they want to treat people? What their values, right? Those are zero crossed, right, principles you want to hold within your family. But besides that, you want to be flexible on what they particularly want to do and want to go and stuff like that. And the worst kind of probably is that you call that baseball dad phenomenon of, like, it's your dream to play Major League Baseball. You put your kids through that and to sort of live. I do think that is one of the worst way of parenting, because I sort of witnessed being very lucky enough to witness sort of my parents not doing particularly that, especially my dad, where, like, he was living out his dream. So I think the best way to we live out our dreams, and then kids will just see the action and be like, wow, he's really living a authentic, dedicated life to what he believes worth doing. Then eventually to grow up doing the same for them. Just like Peter Buffett is a world-known pianist. That has nothing to do with capital allocation from Warren's side, right? His other son is a farmer in Nebraska. It's closer to his roots and operates a farm. But Peter Buffett's completely like his mother, Buffett's wife, Susan Buffett, which is an artist. So that you have to be sort of flexible on a vision there, if you will. Which actually, it does segue into something that it was kind of flexible. We can talk about you can either from a business team building function or from a family people perspective, in the sense where I wrote this down particularly of the personality strength that people are suited for doing different things. And then there's this different ways to success of, like, we use this, people who know me well, actually my wife did sort of influence me on this a lot. And then I picked it up of this MBTI 16 personality approach of understanding people. And this, like, ENTPs like myself, who is more productive in a dynamically changing environment, right? Like INTJs, like my wife, are stronger in sort of more introverted environments and apply their great ICs and research scientists, things like that. And then ENTJs like you, right, who's very similar to me, but has more of a desire for control outcome in a certain way. They're great at team management, team alignment, and running large organizations. Like ideally, let's say, let's say despite you doing startup now, but I've always envisioned, let's say, I always told you it will be a natural strength of yours of if you were to become the, head of worldwide consumer at Amazon, or head of like running a existing organization that's large, 50,000 people, whatever it is. I think your strength, you'll be much more suited doing that. In my opinion, this is just direct, and I think I told you that probably before, so not afraid to say it again. In a sense where I think that's you're much more to be a Fortune 500 CEO, like or let's say think of the difference between a Jamie Dimon versus a Charlie Munger, even if you will, or Warren Buffett, in the sense where they don't need to run large teams, but Dimon needs to get the entire history of JP. There's the history weight of JP Morgan, and there's this running such a large global bank that responsibility on there. Or then versus somebody who's like a Joe Rogan, who's a great individual creative contributor at this certain point, can even swing elections, right? But he's famously training all day, Joe Rogan podcasts all night. He basically during the day he does mixed martial arts, and now he does podcasts, basically doing whatever he enjoys. I might be more toward that side. So people have this different strength and weaknesses tailored to different situations. And I really think the success stories are which leads to the second mountain of the happy. The people who I've seen both successful and happy are generally probably doing something that's easier to them than to other people, that's tailored to their strength, if you will. What's your take and any stories and thoughts on that?
So I'll tap a little bit personal story. I've loved basketball. I've always wanted
I know where you're going with this.
Be good at it. And I've tried out multiple times for my high school team.
Yep. We were supposed to be the Splash Brothers.
But I never made it to the team.
Yeah.
That was a very painful experience. But what I've taken away is that there are things that I've given all my effort to, yet still don't do well. And then there are things that I give bare minimum effort and turn out top of the class. What if I combine them into one thing? What if I put that same amount of effort into loving something that I'm also just so good at naturally without even putting any effort? Then that is really what defines somebody's upper boundary, right? So I think strength and then loving the strength, executing your strength is going to be able to define like your upper limit of what you can achieve. So yeah, that's my feeling.
The understanding of psychological competence, the sort of Charlie Munger's quote of like, what is a competence if you don't understand the edge of it, right? There's this edge of the more you know, the more you don't. If you know this much and this is your sort of competence, and then you touch on the circle of a lot of things that you don't know about, and then you know where the limit is, and you sort of or there's another quote that comes to my mind of the founder of IBM, Thomas Watson said, "I am no genius, but I'm smart around spots, and I stick to those spots." I relate to that a lot, as in the world of public markets investing, there's so many different ways to do it. There's so many different companies, so many different tickers, so many different commodities, so many different markets. You can be a gold trader, you can be a oil trader, you can be doing equities, you can do emerging markets, you can do a lot of things. I think the year I found out I knew what I was doing was around the time I go, oh, I am good around these two spots, and there's 20,000 spots out there. I'm gonna stick with these two, type of thing. Do you think that applies to personal life in a way, or do we have to? I sometimes think about this, and this is sort of open-ended in a sense where I think about back to how we started on the, being I feel this pressure and responsibility of I have to be a all well-rounded, literally Superman, to be a good dad. Is there that aspect that's or we can still lean to, because like doing a business, doing something, you can't just lean to it. In a way, you can lean to your strength and thrive and shine in that. So my general advice to young people is to sort of not follow the passion, if you will, follow your strength, and you be killer successful at it. But being a dad, it feels completely different weight. I almost feel like I have to be Superman, if you will.
Actually, this is a gut feeling. I haven't really spent too much time thinking through this.
Yeah.
But I feel like professionally, you want to lean into your strength. But from a family and person, like personally,
You want to fix
you
your
almost
weakness?
have to like lean into your weakness and improve on it.
Yep.
Because life, first of all, you don't get an organization to fix your weakness. You don't get to delegate that much.
Yep.
Second is like probably the biggest friction point is going to be the friction point that causes the largest fights.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you almost like want to just cruise on your strength, but really like focus on improving the areas that are causing frictions, which is typically your weakness. You don't have to be great.
True.
You don't have to turn into your strength. You just need to kind of polish it enough that it doesn't drag you behind.
Be well-rounded enough so that particular weakness does not sink the whole ship. Right.
Correct.
Like in my example, I'm assuming the willingness to frequently communicate with my kids might not be a problem for me because I'm expressive. So they won't get that traditional Eastern Asian dad of never saying I love you. They'll get plenty of that. That part is that's typical concern for Asian families, right? But that's not a part for me. And I got that from my parents, especially from my father. But there might be other things that I need to do better on in order to be all around to be there for them. Yeah, that is deep there. If you guys caught that what Hexi said, because he's talking about this. Let me just rephrase you. Of professionally, you want to lean into your strength because it's a highly competitive world. How do you know if something is your superpower? Is that it is easy to you, but it's hard for other people to do. Therefore, you have an edge. With an edge, you can have margin. With a margin, you have a product or service, and you have people pay for it. But you're seeing in your personal life, the second mountain we need to climb from a family perspective to be there. I felt this pressure immediately. And obviously I didn't expect that on a recording day this morning, but I was just processing that one piece of information, if you will. So and on that standpoint. So I think it is, and identifying weakness, what takes self-awareness, and working on them takes any thoughts and examples there. I can see how identifying one's own weakness takes, obviously, of course, a community too, right? People who's willing to tell you what they actually think. But what would be something that's
I would say like a piece of suggestion for working on weakness, especially like kind of setting for family, is you have a reason to fix your weakness now. I feel like professionally,
you're right.
It's very hard to find a reason and to get that motivation together.
You're spot on, brother.
You're barely rewarded for it. But on a personal level, like I feel like on a personal level, your weakness, like the weakest part is gonna be the overall like experience. So if you raise that weak bar, you can potentially improve the kind of the cohesiveness.
Let me call myself out on something which I think you agree on, my weakness, and then ask something, if you will, as authentic as we are on the podcast, and we'll add this top of it as we are framing this work around this chapter of the second section of this climbing the second mountain thing. Is I'm deliberately working on having a more consistent schedule because I'm going to be a dad. That's something, as you know, I thrive off the strength, I think, because in my line of work, sometimes if I want to work 9 hours straight, I work 9 hours straight. Sometimes you want to do it at 2 a.m., I do it at 2 a.m. I want to do it at 8 a.m., need to be up early during those COVID market days. I wake up at 5:55 and do that. But on the next day, if I need to wake up at 12, I wake up at 12. I do not care about the fixed scheduling of the work session for almost a decade and having great outputs proven. Obviously, that's doable. So I always think, that piece already. But now, if I want to drop off my son or daughter to school at 7:00 and enjoy that, you better just do that consistently. Otherwise, they'll be like, well,
school don't wait for you.
We'll be like, well, dad drops me off on Wednesdays, but I don't know if he's coming Thursday because he's like, he wants to, read his whatever, and he wants to go for a morning run at like a odd hour that he, and then sometimes when he's doing his morning run, he feels like he should run 2 hours longer, and then he doesn't come back, and I don't get to drop it off to my, practice or something. So having because I enjoy spontaneous part of life. I'm just wired that way. But
and maybe your kid thrive best when things are structured, right? Like you don't know where his strength is, so you sometimes have to give up a little bit of yourself for somebody else.
That's right.
That circles right back to the original point.
Yeah. of putting yourself as the
Number three.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thanks for indirectly calling me out on this. At least made me thought about this. I've been working on it already, knowing, I think she told me about this like about 2 weeks ago. Today is the actual appointment to confirm and check that. Getting confirmation from the doctor with the ultrasound. But, starting 2 weeks ago, I was really going, you know what? Your 30s is going to be different than your 20s. You got to, your success somewhere doesn't mean that, that's sort of continued growth, if you will.
Yeah. And there's like a random thought that's
Go ahead.
Unrelated.
Yeah.
I was thinking this morning, the hardest thing to do is to change a CEO's mind.
Did you get that from a customer standpoint
No.
or from your own?
No, I just think like a founder / CEO needs to be so stubborn to stick to their vision, stick to their way of things, that they can weather all the noise. And there are times where their mind needs to change, but it's just so hard to change somebody's mind, especially when they're in that kind of position, right? And now you blend that back into personal life. Like you've been so successful for doing these things, carrying old habits. Now you have to veto that and be somebody else in this personal setting. It's like so hard to change your mind.
Yeah. That's what it's critical. Touch on this point beautifully, and it covers both sections of our conversation. Is this? I want to touch on this earlier on one of the notes, but I didn't want to interrupt you. Of this mindset of two things, okay, professionally and personally. Why I think public, and I wrote Brian, the founder and now retired chairman of the board, retired CEO of HubSpot. He responded to me on X, particularly on this. I want to show that tweet. I suggested him to either come on my podcast or I join his to talk about this particular issue. And he told me to write about it and to have more exposure that way and more structured thought of why I think public markets are great for training, even for like, let's say a Series B level, like having some kind of, but like not quote unquote public ready. Because when they think about like how often Zuck had to change his mind based on stock prices, and he had to do the year efficiency, laying off people, change metaverse, do blah, 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 all those, not everything does right. But because there's this like feedback system that's so real, it's not even his personal wealth, right? It's more about like your stock-based compensation now gets cut in like a quarter. How does when stock price change, how do your employees feel? Or Jensen's positive feedback of, oh wow, now these, I'm producing like millionaires by the day in Santa Clara of these Nvidia stock prices. Then how do they feel? And they feel even more aligned to go work for the leather jacket guy, right? So like just this positive, negative reinforcement of those type of thing, the immediate feedback system. Then quickly, this leads to the personal side. Then it's even more important to surround yourself. People will tell you what's up, like truly.
Yeah.
Not yes people, not no people, but people tell you what they think, and they might not be correct either, but what the real thoughts are.
Yeah.
To have that system that ties back to our close, friend group and outside the immediate family, because immediate families have ways of, let's say our birth parents, right? They have ways to like, we love them, we have great relationship with them. It might be an echo chamber sometimes because you might be similar to your mom, I might be similar to my mom in this type of ways. And then you have your sort of partner, which is probably the most important decision, the most important relationship you have in your life, because that has the most consistent feedback in your team together when you parent. But also having a circle that will give you, knowing you who you are, be like, hey, I know you for 10 years, Hexi. This is a situation I think maybe, and you go, Robert, look, this wasn't a problem before, my friend. But now I gotta call, now your dad, this might be like those type of things, or just indirectly making me realize that. So structuring a system around that, that's obviously from a public markets investment standpoint, I am biased, but I truly believed, I thought about this objectively all the way through. And I only came about this idea about the last year or so after seeing so many how private companies operate in the Valley, to see the potential of, if they were just under a quarterly earnings report, some kind of 4 times a year public scrutiny, and then their behaviors, one, you can't overpromise, underdeliver. You say, well, you're going to do this on earnings call, did you execute, right? And then stock price reflect that. And there's a wisdom in the crowd too, where in the modern markets, there's so much information being laid around. There's a lot of people vote with their dollars, and the price change that way. So anyhow, those two thoughts always tie together to me of why, arguably, doing that particular gig benefited me more than what I got out of the gig from public markets investing.
Mm-hmm.
It really forced me to sharpen my thinking all the time,
mm-hmm.
if you will. So, and hopefully I can do that in my family life. And the analogy from Jay Shetty's podcast, mm-hmm. of the 3 type of relationship, remember? The spark, the candle, and the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to my wife, she's a mirror in the sense where she definitely provides the candle effect as well. And for many, many years, we enjoy the spark. But most importantly, the mirror is when you're with someone, they show you who you truly are. So there's no sense of triumph or trough, if you will. There's no extreme success or failure. She's always the same person, even killed, no matter what the outside world might label me to be. So that's essential, I think. So, great, brother. So hopefully everybody can be fulfilled and happy. The second piece of the mountain, I think people need to climb. Your sort of LinkedIn career profile updates with your bank account and how much and how famous or not famous you are. I don't think those things, as we found out through generations after generations, determine how happy you are. It is generally, and Arthur Brooks, professor from Harvard, had great resources on this. It's your friends, family, faith, and so there's a spiritual life component as well. And are you doing work that's serving other people? Those four things are the core pillar. There's just free shout out to him of the art of happiness. That's great. So hopefully people get that as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's a great time.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Since we're rolling, would love to get a 2-minute intro of who you are, Hayden, and where you came from, what your background is, and
All right, my name's Hayden Pester. I just recently started working with Robert here at Pure Value Capital. I graduated May 2025, so fresh out of school. My background primarily revolves around investment research, sort of the Warren Buffett value kind of tilt as Robert kind of preaches. So that was one thing that we really connected over, and I'm just getting started here and really excited to see what we build over the coming years.
nice, awesome.
And then I've got some questions for you. It's been great to listen to you and Robert chat for the past 2 hours or so. I wanted to ask first, kind of where do you see Bumblebee going in the next 5 to 10 years, kind of where you're at today, and then where do you plan on being over the next decade?
Heavy load, first one.
Yeah, heavy load.
Yeah.
The mission for Bumblebee is to empower the average small, medium business owners and operators to build things that makes their life easier. So when you think about technology, every wave of change lower the barrier of entry for adoption. Software had been such a high barrier industry for people to use and build that English is now the new programming language. Because the English is the new programming language, a much larger population is going to be enabled to leverage software without having to write the bare metal code. They can just talk in English and kind of build things from there. So it used to be 1% of job that goes to software engineering. And I think it's going to be a lot more when we enable users to build automation. If you think about the small, medium business, the day-to-day life, they do a lot of boring things, crunching numbers, moving things left and right, sometimes through spreadsheets, sometimes through SaaS software. And the mission is to enable them to build so they don't have to do the manual work anymore, 5-10 years.
So kind of trying to democratize coding and kind of lowering the barriers to entry in relation to sort of that initial knowledge you need.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be coding at that point. It would just be like democratizing
kind of
ability to build things that replace repetitive tasks. So it might come in the form of building agents. It might come in the form of building workflows. The goal is to just empower builders.
And then given that that's kind of since your goal is just to free up time and drive these efficiencies, I wanted to ask, how are you either using Bumblebee or just other sort of AI applications in your daily life to just free up your time and handle those monotonous tasks?
So we specifically work with IT professionals right now. We help make their daily life better. So we focus on replacing the repetitive clicks. So as an IT professional, like we have a lot of time spent on documenting what I did, how did I troubleshoot this issue, how did I support you, where did I find information. So right now, Bumblebee plugs into the system they already use, the professional service automation software, PSAs, where whenever they finish a task, it helps them document it, helps them look through the history of tasks and see if there's anything recurring that's happening. It helps them construct the emails they send out for renewing Microsoft licenses a small, medium business use. So we start out with these low-hanging fruits, these little things, and then we gradually move more towards the more high-frequency tasks, like setting up a mailbox, configuring a vacation setting for employee, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a expanding use case as we continue.
Awesome. And then my last question for you is a little bit personal, a little bit professional. Obviously, you started pretty impressive career starting with AWS at Amazon and then starting Bumblebee. Was starting your own company something that was always like a dream of yours, or was it working at Amazon? You met some people, maybe you didn't like the corporate structure, you wanted to be your own boss. Just kind of curious as to what enabled you to start Bumblebee.
Thanks. I wouldn't call myself impressive, but I would say the drive to build something from scratch has always been there for me. I've always had like personal projects during my time at Amazon, and was waiting for the right moment to start building. I really enjoy the process of like navigating and driving something that didn't exist before into something that's like very valuable to people. So the desire has been within, and we kind of built the right muscle while at a large company, and kind of put it into reality at some point.
Awesome. So just kind of getting that initial training in at Amazon, kind of working maybe on Bumblebee as a passion project, and then waiting kind of for the right time to strike and kind of split off and do your own thing.
Yeah, I mean, big corporate also give you like a great cash reserve.
Yeah, it gives you kind of the means to split off and do your own thing.
Like I
further down the road.
haven't paid myself for a year and a half, and probably not going to pay myself for this year too. So the fact I can sustain that while investing is a luxury.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. That's pretty much it for me. I think Hayden touched on some good questions, and then we'll welcome Ryan for a few more questions from another
sorry
member,
if I stole your questions, Ryan.
from another member of our team. Yeah. Thanks, Hayden.
Yep, of course.
Good stuff.
Yep.
Cool.
Before we get started, I have to congratulate Robert on that amazing news. That was awesome. So
that's right.
I want to document that for the podcast. I'm excited for our workload and babysitting to go up a little bit over the next few years. So regardless, jumping into the topic of your personal relationship with Robert. Robert said that
I would love to get a quick 1 minute
Sure.
intro as well from you.
me, of course, yeah.
Your
Obviously,
past.
Ryan, I graduated in Dallas, from SMU in Dallas in May of 25, from the Bay Area originally. Persian background, very big on family. My dad influenced me to go into finance from an early age, so I've always had a passion for it. I majored in finance. I did a specialization in entrepreneurship while I was in college as well, but I think that'll just lead to more benefit down the line as opposed to in today's world. Today, I currently enjoy working with Robert and doing what we're doing here, which is great. But yeah, I mean, just very quick introduction about myself. But into the personal relationship side of things, Robert and I always talk about how it's more important to have valuable friendships and relationships in life than it is to have more of those. It's just to have a few and make sure they're really good quality and whatnot. And he said that he tends to find, or from his personal experience, he found a lot of his longtime, very close buddies and best friends in the later stages of life, after college. Maybe early on, he had some good, long-lasting connections, but they were made later on in life. I want to know how your take on making friends after college, for example, maybe whether it's in the workplace, on a racetrack, wherever that may be. How can you, one, source those types of quality friendships, and then two, make them long lasting over 5-10 years so that one day, your best friend can come say, I'm having a kid soon?
Excellent question, especially right out of school. So this is
Sure.
going to be very applicable.
Of course.
For sourcing, I think value alignment is the key for lasting relationships. And your chance is highest to source a value aligned friend from another friend whose value is aligned. So referral or friends is typically where you kind of get that first layer of sourcing after you graduate. So meeting friends that you already trust, not necessarily to the best level, but to a decent level, to have friends that are similar is what you can expect. And then you get kind of a pool. So you have 10 friends, each of them have 10 more friends that you can potentially source, and you have 100 person in the pool.
Sure.
And then through communication, events, you start kind of bonding with some of them. The second half is about commitment. It's to keep showing up for each other. It's to overcome the logistic challenges. It's to remember them in the holidays and to organize trips and bring them together and work around their logistics, their work constraints, and being present for their promotion, their layoff, or anything meaningful in their life that help kind of cement that relationship. And during the process, you might find that might not be the right fit. Then you kind of deviate from there.
Sure. That's great. Go ahead, please, Robert.
Yeah, that is a great question, right? And I think it's very mature for you to think about it already. And the process, like Hexi is speaking about, it is very, it's there's an intricacy around it, as in like, say you have a friend, he's talking about you going to a friend's friend, or there's some vetting process, right?
Yeah.
Like I would say two pieces. The second piece is time management. The first one is this sort of this connection based. I think a lot of times when you are, let's say you're person A, right? Then you meet person B, and then, or you know person B for a while. Like Hexi said, they might not be your closest confidant, but you know them pretty well. And then through that opportunity, you met person C, and a lot of times A and C can be great friends. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So where you might not even be the closest on, let's say, many levels with B, B is still respectable in your life. So then you connect with C. So there's a lot of, and then C might lead you to actually to meet D, who become your best friend for life or something. Yeah. Or for people who are single, meet their life partner or something like that. So that interesting. And the second piece I want to call out is time management. I think it is very important for, like, for example, what Hexi is talking about, this post-graduation period of, like, after college started working period. This time, I think, it is probably, in my opinion, the best time to find friends and build your circle. It's because now, as thank you for congratulations, that just moving to the next stage of life is this aspect of, oh, now I probably need to be there time-wise to spend more time with my wife and family, things like that, where there's this like semi-smooth period where beyond the initial dating meeting phase, right? You might have entered a stable, relatively stable period with your partner where you are seeing each other, your boyfriend, girlfriends, whatever it is, right? But you're not sharing responsibility yet, right? So you're just basically having a relationship, but you have nothing. You don't need to even raise a cat together, let's say, right? So that time is probably those, ideally, let's say you have that from 25 to 31 or 23 to 29. That 6 years is your best time to make friends. Because you can really be flexible for you. If we got a great friend in New York, we just gotta go fly to see him. Now I fly to see him, right? Yeah. My wife is like perfectly fine at home, and I don't need to, or girlfriend back then, right? We just got married last year, so like we don't necessarily need to attend to another baby's need. Sure. And then you can just do that on the go, right? We did that numerous times for each other and for friends within our circle, right? So I think this really you touched on perfectly. So basically, I would say, especially from a time management perspective, this 23 to 29, that's 6 years. So basically 29, 23, right between you and Hexi, that 6 years is the best time to make interesting friendships, right? Or for single people out there to make to find a life partner, if you will, because really time's in your hands. Besides work, like all the flexibilities are yours, and you can go, like say after Friday you clock off, you can go to Jiangwing Airport and fly to somewhere to meet two people that are important to you, or you might find interesting, and fly back Sunday. That's 48 hours. You get a lot done. We used to meet in Seattle for a weekend and come right back to work, right? That type of things. When he lived in Seattle. So great question.
To keep on the time management topic, earlier when you guys were speaking, I was listening in, and you mentioned how you could sometimes put 10 hours of work into something and really not even get 10 minutes worth of output out of it. And you said part of your, transition in your personality was realizing the solitude, putting the work in at the right time and just locking in. My question to you is, how can somebody who currently doesn't have the ability to, let's say, lock in for whether it's 30 minutes, an hour, 5 hours, 10 hours, however long it may be, but how can somebody lock in to create quality output from the work that they put in? Because obviously people don't want to waste time, running, let's say 2-3 days worth of work and not getting any output out of it. But in reality, the ideal is just to make it more efficient. So how can you, whether it's focusing in and working alone or working at a coffee shop, or how have you done it to make sure that the work that you're actually putting in provides some sort of output that's meaningful?
So I actually it's a great question. I actually want to answer your question with a different question.
Sure.
Which is, why does the output matter? When you approach a task from the point of view where you need to produce certain outputs, you're under pressure to come up with something. You might not be in an optimal flow state to actually explore and be creative because you're pressured to produce output. What if that thing you're doing does not require output, It only requires input. And that input is something you enjoy. Enjoy very much, that you just write things down or produce things that are side effects of your inputs. They're not necessarily expected outputs. When you keep doing that and repeat that process, at some point, whatever that side effect is going to become output. And then you're going to have enough muscle to consistently produce that side effect. And other people are going to start appreciating it. And that turns into a long-term, sustainable
That's a great way of
process.
putting it. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Don't think of it as output you need to come up with.
Sure.
Think of it as input you volunteer because you love it so much.
Okay. This kind of just a little bit of a different topic, but it sidetracked me to a different point that you mentioned earlier, which was, the actual quality of writing output as a human versus an AI just spitting some sort of output down. At my age and the way I see it, I feel like writing takes too long, right? And I think that if I can get, let's say, a quality output from an AI, whatever sort of LLM it may be, but a quality output that's maybe 70% or 80% there, maybe it's more efficient to just use AI and get better at AI than actually focus on writing that memo myself. And why do I think that? It's because it's just about time efficiency, right? If I can do an hour of work and get maybe an hour and a half of output out of it, then that's a good idea. But obviously, like you said earlier, the quality of writing down your thoughts and that whole process is a beauty of its own. So can you explain to me a little bit more about why you think that writing and a human written memo or message or report is better than an AI, and in what ways that's better?
So the writing process, when you jot something down, you read it one more time and you think through what you just read, often makes you change what you want to write.
Yeah.
So that kind of iteration is the beauty of writing. It's actually not the fact it was concise. It was that you're iterating, you're consolidating more and more and more of raw data into this small piece.
Sure.
That process is valuable.
Now, a quick question. What if you just reprompt the AI after it gives you its first output, and then that's your second attempt, third attempt from there?
And I think that's very possible how people iterate moving forward. And I have no objections against it. I think
we can borrow a Steve Jobs quote. He said this in the 80s, which was impressive, right? 30, 40 years before we have the modern LLM. He's saying, think of a computer as a bicycle for your mind. So one was, let's say, for example, last week, riding through South Beach with my wife on a bicycle. We got there, I typically run through that, but for her, she wanted to go a little bit further, she would choose biking, right? So for me, the running process from maybe to South Beach was like 3.6 miles, maybe on my best days, like 40 minutes. So typically it takes an hour resting, chilling between whatever, hydrate. Then 3.6 miles on a bike is just get there in 15 minutes or something. Yeah. So obviously with the enhanced boost, you get faster, right? Yeah. Bicycle for the mind. But what's the missing piece? You gotta know where you're going. I know I want to go to Muscle Beach, South Beach to get a workout in after the bike or the cardio. So therefore, I have to know where I want to go, right? So no matter it's a bicycle or supercharger, supersonic machine for your brain, you still have to know where you want to go.
That's a good way of putting it as well.
And writing, a lot of times, it's actually, you don't have to think it as a cumbersome process. And this is also, and you and I talk about this, like, and you definitely know I'm an advocate of this, is that most people think of, let's say, for example, going to the gym, being fit, it's like a big task. Go for 5 minutes. Next day, go for 7. Next day, go for 19. Next day, go for 21 and a half. And then the third day, you don't feel like going, don't go. Yeah. But it's better than not going, right? So the idea of like writing, I think you do think of this as a holy, and which a lot of respect on your end to think of this like as a big project, right? And it doesn't have to be. You can write something for 7 minutes and then save it, prompt later or something. So by doing a little bit, you generally know which direction you're going, if that makes sense. So versus, I think not doing it, then purely prompting probably doesn't provide you the direction where to go. Then, especially with AI incentivized to give you prompt these days, because you know how now after every question they go like, "Would you like me to do this and do that?" It's literally telling you how to think in a way. Right? But if you write on your own the process, just a few words down and be like, "This is what I want to express" or something. That trains your brain and you're thinking a different way.
I definitely see the value. I mean, I just think that the AI has created such an efficient way of going about this process. It's such a revolutionary technology. In the software industry, in the AI industry, what do you think will be, and again, you can't obviously predict this, but where do you see the industry is heading in terms of the next groundbreaking AI, internet, what is the next thing that we can anticipate, or something that you foresee as a huge problem and then something that needs a solution to it?
So AI so far, like language model, has been text. I think the next breakthrough would be just in general, like multimodal reasoning, understanding, essentially be able to mimic human to even a higher level, incorporating our visuals and kind of voice inputs, and be able to reason about those information comprehensively. Is I know a lot of things are in flight and in terms of research projects,
Yeah.
and a lot of technology is maturing, and that could manifest in the form of robotics, that could manifest in the form of like self-driving cars, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that will come to be more maturity
Sweet.
in
That's
the near
awesome.
future.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm excited to be a part of that journey. That's for sure. Anyways, that's my questions for today. Again,
Awesome.
congrats, Robert. Thank you again, Hexi.
Thanks. Great questions.
Thank you for being here, as always.
Of course.